quick trip over to Europe, and then we come back here to Australia, none other than Sandown. And what a way to kick off our third round of the Logitech Pro Invitational Qualifier Series. I am Jake Blackall. Joining me once again, the commentary with Stephen Sandman Clark and Jake Burton. Sandman, coming live from you in your little man cave, and what a way to come back to Australia. None other than Sandown, obviously one of the newest tracks that we got on the service, and it has produced some great racing. Hopefully we can get some safety cars tonight.
Absolutely. It's certainly a different mindset, isn't it? When we were here last time, it was all about endurance racing. And of course, that mindset too leads you to having a co-driver that has to help you out to get that result. Tonight, different story. It's all about sprint racing. And for me, it's a traditional lead up in the endurance side of it when we have Sandown and Bathurst, which we've got in the real life calendar this year, which is fantastic. But to be here for a sprint race, I reckon this is terrific.
That's it. It's going to be one of those races where we've got to switch our mindset from last season. It was that Enduro 161 laps. It didn't have a caution. Jake had to drive through that. How was that, Jake, when you got to drive through it? Now you got to watch him do sprint racing.
Yeah, pretty excited for this sprint race around here, Jake. I think this place is actually pretty good for sprint racing, I think. As much as we love a Sandown 500, I think the big, long front and back straights gives plenty of opportunity for passing. It's also going to be interesting to see how people play it with rear wing. That was a big factor in the Sandown 500. You had some guys run low wing, some cars run high, so I'm keen to see what happens in this qual series.
I think that's also going to be the case of who does what in qualifying, because it's so tight out there right now. The field is separated by nothing at the moment in practice there, man, and I feel like that's going to be the way it goes throughout the whole race. Only just over a tenth and a half separates the top 10 in practice. Top 20 separated by under half a second.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It makes me think, thank goodness I'm here in the commentary box, because the pressure that these guys are under to get these times out. I mean, at the moment, they're probably breathing a sigh of relief because it's practice. It does take that pressure off. But as soon as it switches to qualifying, that mindset changes straight away for them. So they know that they really have to make it count. We talk about it each and every week as far as getting a banker down. So that'll be crucially important when you look at exactly how close these times are.
Yeah, and like Jake said, I think sprint racing here, it's the perfect track for it. It's going to suit it really well. I think we're going to be in for a lot of action this week, especially after last week at Hockenheimring. What a race. Unfortunately, I wasn't here, but Lockie Mansell fielded perfectly for me, and what an event that was. Leonard and Rudd all the way down to the final end. And Jake, now you come here, you got to switch your mind from Hockenheim. Those two will be wanting to go at it again, but it's all about getting inside that top 20, and I feel like this race could throw off a lot of variables that you might have that could just plague you trying to make yourself locked into that top 20 before next week at Bathurst.
Well, 100%, Jake. The thing is take a look at the times right now. You've got guys like Kuznetsov at the top at a 0.26, but you only got to hop back 2.5 or so tenths, and you're looking 15th, 20th, 25th. You know, like it's really close. And the issue you have with that coming into this qualifying session is if you butcher it as much as you can, sort of make some moves around here, your race is pretty much over. As we know, this qualifying series, you only get 4 shots at this. So if you get this one wrong, you're going to have to hope for a really good round next week at Bathurst.
And that's the thing, you head to Bathurst next week, and we know how tough Bathurst is. That place is obviously our crown jewel of motorsport. We, like Sandman, you mentioned it before, we go to Sandown to Bathurst in enduro sense, but here we go in sprint racing sense. I think that makes a little bit more emphasis on doing well here tonight, because you know you can't make up as much time at Bathurst. It's hard to pass, it's hard to make up that ground, and if you have a bad race here, it's going to be difficult to make that up at Bathurst next week.
Absolutely. That's the last place on the calendar that I'd want to be heading to if you're in a pressure cooker situation as far as being inside that top 20. You know, thinking about those points and knowing that you really have to rely on a decent round at Bathurst. No thanks. I'd rather get the job done here tonight. Make yourself sort of comfortable and in a position where you know you're in for a decent result, and then let Bathurst play out. We know how tricky that place is when we go endurance, but it's really going to step up a notch when you think about it, because the pressure is going to be on at Mount Panorama. And for those guys that are buying their way in and they really desperately need those points to make it into this series, that's their last chance. You know the desperation level is going to go through the roof.
And desperation levels at Bathurst usually means contact with a fence. There's enough walls around there that you can make heavy contact, and that'll be race done. It's going to be interesting to see how they all play out as practice finishes and we get started for qualifying for round 3 of the Logitech Supercars Pro Invitational here from Sandown. And what a way to kick it off, because Kuznetsov, Lianich, Rudd, Dyson, Gibbs, all within a tenth of a second. Top 5 nothing in it. And it's going to be like that for this whole qualifying session as the field starts to roll out. Jake, what do you look forward to in terms of this type of a session? What do you think these guys will be trying to do? Because you don't want to burn that tyre up early. It is quite hot out there tonight, so I think these guys will be looking just to try to limp around. How do you attack this session?
I think everyone's going to be so preoccupied looking for a tow, Jake. We remember that when we raced here in the Pro Series last year. I was actually a victim of it, getting caught in a crash. You don't want to get off sequence. I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's a short enough lap that I think finishing every one of your laps is going to be key, because if you get off sequence trying to find tow, you're just going to get held up. So yeah, find a nice bit of tow. Maybe this first lap, like looking at Sebastian Flock at the moment, he might be the kind of guy who'll go out and just try and do a solo lap, see what he can do, and then improve from there. But for me, you're wanting to find the tow.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that big accident right here coming into turn 11 and 12 last season in qualifying, where there was everyone just jostling, trying to find a draft partner, trying to get in line to get the best run you can. It's 2 long straights mixed in with a couple of corners. There's not much else of that as we look at a couple of driver cams that we do have while these guys get started in the first qualifying session. I'm sure we'll bring those guys up as they are under pressure and intense moments, and see what all the tongue wagging and face pulling has happened during the evening. But qualifying for the bottom 22 drivers are out on track at the moment as we watch Sebastian Flock, like Jake said, all out on his lonesome right now, Sam, and it's given him sort of his own little bubble to do what he has done straight away out the box.
It's a bit like what I touched on before, isn't it? It's getting that banker down. Don't worry about possibly getting a tow for your first lap. Get a banker down and then maybe look for someone to work with. If you're lucky enough to have a teammate that's in this session as well, have a chat with them, work something out and see if you can help each other, because, of course, if you get the tow, you want to return the favour to your teammate as well.
And that's where a lot of these guys with other teammates in this session, mind you, they could be other Evolution Racing Team drivers, other SSR drivers, but they could be in the later session. They've got 15 minutes here, 5-minute break, then the next 15 minutes will go with the rest of the other drivers in this qualifying series. If you don't have a teammate in this first session, you sort of got to try and find someone else to work with. Sebastian Flock, first time, comes out 1 minute 7.56 to the top. And let's see what that can hold out as the rest of the field starts to come in, Sam Ann. And let's see, these guys that are in this massive train here should be able to maybe go a little bit quicker depending on how good their run was.
It's a bit of a hold your breath moment, isn't it, for that first lap, because everyone's just laying down that banker. So you're going to see the times jostle around as we see that. See Cameron in third, but now he's already swept back to sixth place now. So
I go to the top.
It's his first lap where these drivers are all putting in that banker, and then it's starting to switch on the speed after that. But yeah, like I said, Muggo gone to the top of the timesheets. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks, haven't we? That Muggo's very quick out of the box. We're just going to see if he can hang in there as the session goes on.
Although last week he got basically fed out wide at turn 1 and it sort of plagued the rest of his night from there. It's one of those things he's got to try and stay out of the lap 1 carnage. It's so hard to do. You can qualify so far up the field. I'm sure you can testify to that, Jake. You can qualify anywhere and put yourself in a situation that is not of your own doing, but then it just hurts you for the whole night.
That's it, and especially at a track like this, like the opening half of this lap here at Sandown is actually surprisingly tight. It almost has sort of a weird street circuity feel to it, especially when you get down to turns 2 and 3. You got this tight chicane, you got Armco barriers really close to the track. It's really easy to get yourself turned around, and then you got to wait for the whole field to pass to actually get yourself back sorted and back together. So obviously getting out in quali and making sure that you're in the non-carnage parts of the field is a really good place to start. But you know, Sandown can bring anything.
Oh, Sandown can bring anything, and we've seen that all last season. We thought 161 laps, there will be a safety car. There wasn't. Maybe sprint racing, we might see a couple more times for that Aston Martin Logitech G safety car come out. But 4.5 gone in this opening session. Muggleton on top with Flock, Borg, Whiting, Johnston rounding out the top 5. A couple of guys off sequence right now, Sam, man, just trying to see what they can do in terms of maybe their first lap gotten off track. There is obviously this massive run down the hill, 6, 7, 8, then into turn 9. You can easily get an off track there, cost your lap. And I feel like as well, you're not going to burn much of the tyre. I'm going to actually chuck back to Jake on this one. Can you actually get a second lap out here because of it's not a lot, it's not high deg this track?
Potentially. A big thing that's going to be a factor tonight is that track temp. We got a 48C track temp at the moment, so I would say that the odds are pretty much no. If you manage to ruin every one of your laps and it's sort of the only option you've got, you could definitely go for another one, and I'd definitely fuel the car to do that. But yeah, realistically, it's going to be first lap, especially with how tight these margins are. You know, even at the moment, we've only had half the field run. It's only really half a second separating our top 10. So.
And this is what we talked about before. That half a second could be plus or minus if you get a good enough toe lap, and these guys are all looking for it down that back straightaway. All of them on the left-hand side, Sandman. We don't want another incident like we had last time in qualifying, but these guys are already hunting for that lap after their opening laps.
Absolutely. I think what you said before, you touched on that there are a couple of drivers that are out of sync. So it's probably worked out nicely that they were able to take their time down that back straight. They're all obviously checking out their relatives too, because they don't want to hold or impede anyone. That could obviously lead into a penalty too. So yeah, these all guys now, they're all looking to get a draft off each other. So no, it's it's off now into the distance and see what they can do.
Yeah, the start of their second flying laps for a lot of these guys. I think that was Zachary Hanlon, then improved up to P number 12. Moved himself just outside that top 10, but this will be the group that we watch on. A couple of quick guys in Italiancic is obviously leading this field through the opening sector of that. Damien Johnstone is also amongst that. A couple, I think Muggleton's in there as well. Aaron Borg, I think, Brian Borg, sorry, is in there as well as the guys. As you can see, you stuff up that opening sector. It's so tight, it's so hard. You just got to pull out after the straight and then try and hopefully regain from there.
It's funny how much these cars change too. If you catch yourself out when you get this toe, I think sometimes you can forget a little bit just how much more speed you're carrying. And if you miss that braking zone, Jake, you can probably talk about this, is it changes your driving style automatically, doesn't it? When you know you've got those few extra kilometres up your sleeve and you're catching a toe, you've got to be mindful of that braking zone.
That's it, and it's so easy to get that thing, Sam, and I'm sure you and Jake have both had it before, where you're looking at your massive green delta bar that you've got, and you start to get the shakes, you start to feel nervous, you get this thing in your stomach, and then you just blow away the last two corners, and you just think, oh God, I'm so stupid for throwing that away. But Josh Muggleton looks like he's actually just improved. He's put it down into a 3. Something that I noticed really interestingly, I was comparing him and Sebastian Flock. Josh Muggleton without toe was 11 kilometres an hour faster down the back straight than Sebastian Flock. So there's, like I said at the start, there's going to be some stuff with wing and that sort of thing that plays a factor here, and Brian Borg now to the top as well.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's handy, isn't it? Having that 11 Ks in your back pocket, that's not bad, is it?
I'd like 11 Ks in my back pocket sometimes. That would be handy, wouldn't it? Especially in a TCR car. I'd like that any day of the week, but that is a big gain. And Muggleton did the lap he needed to. He got the draft from in front, but who was behind him? Borg. Who improved? Borg. That was the thing, and we mentioned that earlier on, that you just need to get in the toe of the right person at the right time. Brian Borg was in the right position because he knew Muggleton was going to be on a lap, so he was in the right position to get the extra bit of draft, and you always can judge yourself on that car in front, especially in a qualifying session, as a lot of these guys are going to jump back into pit lane, get a fresh set of boots and go again. And that really helped him, didn't it, Sandman, to get that provisional P1?
Absolutely, and that's the best thing you can do. If you find yourself in a position in a qualifying session where you don't have teammates, what do? You look to the guy who's the top of the timesheets, find out where he is on the racetrack and just stick on his bumper and take what you can. So yeah, that was good, and it was the perfect time to do it, because obviously Muggleton punched out of time, and then of course Brian just inched it out that little bit more, so it was brilliant.
And that's all you need. You just need them just to improve their lap time, because you know, okay, I'm going to have maybe a 10th, maybe half a 10th or something on them in terms of how I'm going in terms of the draft, and you can always judge yourself. And I think you can testify to that, Jake, when you're following someone, especially you that you know is going to be fast, you can always just judge, oh, I can break it. Not that tiny bit later, but that little bit more that I can go, okay, I've actually gained here, so I'm actually up on him compared to what you can see in front of you.
Well, that's it, Jake. Like around a lap around here, I'd say, depending on what wing you're running, a toe's probably worth 3.5 tenths, maybe even 4 if you get it right. So realistically, you can afford to drive 2 tenths off the pace and still be 2 tenths up, right? So if you're behind someone as quick as Josh Muggleton, you can afford to break, you know, a few meters earlier here, a few meters earlier there, because you know he's going to pull you down the straight. So that's what Brian Borg's done. Hopefully he can stay up there and be as competitive into the second half of the session.
Yeah, just ticking over, coming up to 10 minutes in the first qualifying session for round 3 of the qualifying series here as we look at the Logitech G Autos esports car of Zach Hanlon. Oh, on the curb, on the exit curb. You can use that curb to get a good exit out of turn 9. You can use it as like as a motocross berm, as they like to call it, and get the grip off the corner. But it's spun up on the right rear tyre, and I don't know if he's going to actually improve his M. And he did set personal best first sector, not a crash hot middle sector. I think the end of the lap wasn't going to be much better either, and that is not going to be an improved time. He is going to stay in P14.
Yeah, your blood boils a little bit too. Like you said, it's such an advantage to use it as a motorcycle berm. But when you feel those tyres light up, you're just like, no! Like you just throw away that lap straight away. It's like, ah, damn it. So depending on how much you lose at that point, they're close enough to pit entering. So at that part of the racetrack, if it's really bad, just dart straight into pit lane, put on a new set of Dunlops and go again.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think he could have done, but maybe he was just on that cusp. If you're on the cusp of going, if I get a good final second sector, like last couple of corners, I can maybe improve depending on my run onto the straight. And I think that's what he maybe tried to see, if he could just get a little bit more out of his time, but unfortunately wasn't able to. Damien Johnstone, though, with the opening sector session best at the moment. He went purple, middle sector, not that crash hot though, so the top at the moment. Let's see what he can finish up this lap. Good exit out of turn number 13 down the front straight. It's a personal best for him. Is that going to be improvement? It is. P2 for Damien Johnstone, 400ths off the top spot at the moment. It's getting close up there, Sam, man.
Yeah, it's crazy close. Jake, when you're in the driver's seat and you start knowing that you're running out of time in the session, for these guys, they only get to the 15-minute mark before the second lot of cars come out. Do you start to stress? Did that put a lot of pressure on you as far as a driver when you can see how close those times are?
That's it, Sam, man, and I think that's what separates the good drivers from the great drivers as well, is those guys who can sort of put it together at the end. We spoke about this way back during week 1 about how, in qualifying, it's just a matter of running through the process and, not over driving the car, not trying to find time that doesn't exist, just putting the lap together, and that's really key in these later stages, and that's where you start guys who are really, really quick and really, really well and calm under pressure, putting out their best laps.
I think that's also one thing that you mentioned there, being calm under pressure, and it always gets mentioned. Some people can do a qualifying lap 10 tenths and do it well. Some people can't qualify but then have to race their way through the field. And it's very evident here, if you can qualify well, you're going to be in a good shot with the race no matter how good of a racer you are. And the guys that are under pressure right now, especially around that bubble spot, are going to be able to perform. We're coming down to the end of the first qualifying session here, roughly just under 2.5 minutes left. These guys will be getting ready to set up their final lap, Sam, man. Sebastian Flock looks like he's going to come up and finish one of his laps. It's not a good lap overall, and he's going to dart straight back in pit lane, get 4 fresh tires.
Yeah, smart move. I don't know if he's going to have enough time, because we were at the 13-minute mark there, so absolutely by the time he sort of gets out, it's going to be session over for him. But, at the end of the day, they try to put their best foot forward, and that's where they're at the moment. The dying stages of qualifying is when you have to lift, and if you haven't quite done enough and you're down the bottom of the field, you start to sweat it out, because the next lot of 15 minutes, the faster group of cars that are in practice are going to come out, and that's going to tumble you down the order, so that's going to hurt.
Schultz improves, moves himself up into P number 13, but you're right, as soon as these second guys go, I think they should get enough time. It's roughly a minute 7 lap time. You're looking at a minute and a half to go now in the session. If you can get around and not have to do a too slow of an outlet, you should be able to get to the finish line before time expires. They are able to finish that lap once they cross the line. No, race control will be looking at that and making sure that no one obviously goes outside that realm of the 15 minutes. As soon as 15 minutes hits, that is done, but those on a lap will be able to finish their laps out as VCOG right now. Let's see what he can do. Currently in the draft of Damien Johnstone, they are going to set up to get ready for this lap. And how much of a pressure does this put him on, Jake? Knowing that you're inside the top 10, 4.5 tenths off the top, you'd like a little bit closer considering how much those other guys are going to be pushing in that window that you've got.
Yeah, well, that's it. It is pressure cooker stuff, because the thing is you've got to almost assume that if you're 10th, you're going to be 25th, right? Yeah. Because you know that you've got a really elite crew of drivers coming up in this next session. You've got to plan for the worst, which is to say that basically, you're going to assume all of them are going to out-qualify you. So really, if you're in this first session, provisional pole is the only thing that's really acceptable.
Pretty much, and that's exactly right. You've got to be up near, basically inside the pole position or within a tenth of it, don't you, Jake? Because as soon as you're outside of that, you know you're going to have a fight on your hands, and I think that's what a lot of these guys do, especially for Sebastian Flock right now. He's 2.5 tenths off in P4. That could be P10, couldn't it, Sam, as well? It's one of those situations where we know these guys that are back in the field. They've been on fire all season, especially last week. Rudley, Yarnish, they were having it out all the way to the end of that race. You expect those two to jump up inside that top 5. For right now, anyone inside that top 10 is not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Jake's mindset too. The way he said it is like, whatever you've got here, plus 25 to it, because you could be going straight down to the bottom of the pack. You just don't know how it's going to play out. So it's all about putting your best foot forward. And now these guys know that in these dying seconds, they know that time's run out. The grid's pretty much set, and now they've just got to see what pressure the other teams come in when that next 15-minute session starts.
And that's right, the session has expired. So now it is all down to these final last couple of laps. Brian Borg is on, and Sebastian Flock as well. Cameron Beacock, Paul Young, those two inside the top 10. They are all still on a lap. Let's see what Sebastian Flock, he just pulls over. He knows it's not good enough. That's done for him. Young's done the same as well. They're all just pulling over. I think that could be session done. The only person right now, Cameron Beacock, is out there. He could maybe try and improve.
It's holding your breath stuff, isn't it, here? When you're using that last part of the racetrack, you know the time has already gone. Finds himself in 8th, so it's not awful, but everyone obviously wants to be P1. Couple of more turns, jumps over the curb. Let's see how the car goes out of here. Up on the berm, and he's going to abort. So there you go.
Day done for the opening qualifying session of round 3 of the Logitech Supercars Pro Invitational, and it's Brian Borg laying down the gauntlet early with a 1:07.31, just in front of Damien Johnstone and Josh Muggleton. They're within a tenth. Sebastian Flock, I think he would be looking for a little bit more, 2.5 tenths off the top with a 1:07.561. Michael Whiting rounding out the top 5 so far, but now we get into the good stuff, and I shouldn't say that, everyone is good here, but these guys know now that the track will be just cooling off slightly. It always has that tendency to do so when we start the second part of qualifying. These guys are going to be quick, and now it's to see if they can get the laps in. We saw a couple of people have to go for another lap and know that they didn't get their banker in and have to push it. That second lap, it has come down a degree, mind you, the track temp at the moment. Sam, and that is one of the things that we're going to look out for. Those opening laps, make sure people get bankers in, and then it's going to be all on out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to get Jake's take too, as far as when you're in those dying sessions of the qualifying session, and you know that you probably can get one more run in. When you fire back to pit lane, you put on a fresh set of Dunlops. How much hurt, I guess, around here do you put into those tyres when you're trying desperately to get to the start-finish line before the session finishes?
Oh, well, ultimately, you've still got to time it, right? Like, there's an important element of timing to it. But at the end of the day, you can go on and on and on about slow out laps, and they do make a difference in this car. There's no question about it. But ultimately, if you miss the session cutoff, there's no lap at all. So just get it there, throw every chance you've got at it. Obviously, you still want to try and look after those rear tyres, especially at such a drive-focused track as what Sandown is. Pretty much every sort of corner that leads onto a straight here is your first, second gear slow stuff. So you've got to keep those rear tyres on it. But ultimately, as I said, you've just got to make sure that you get round and start your lap, if nothing else.
I think that's going to be one of the key factors of this session, is make sure you get a lap and make sure it is good. As we come down 1.5 minutes to this session, any person that stands out to you, Sam, that could try and maybe pick Brian Borg from the top spot.
Oh, mate, we've got so many fast drivers in this session, and I guess that's probably why they were the top 20 odd in practice. So I'm looking at the times. The times aren't too bad. They're not awful, but of course you just don't know how this track's going to evolve. Like we said, the temperature's coming down a little bit, so that will benefit these guys in the second part of qualifying. And we know there's some great names in there too. So for me, I'd always be nervous. I don't know who to keep an eye out on, but you just never know who's going to bank that lap and put it down, and then maybe start darting you down the order.
Yeah, that's it, and it's exactly right. As soon as you see them start dropping down the order, you see them go, yeah, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3 spots lost, I'm still dropping, and it keeps going, doesn't it, Jake? It just continually spirals out of control. Any person that you've seen as well that you've driven around with a lot of these guys before that could be, just put it on the top, that has that Sandown specialist about them?
Well, I'm not sure about specific drivers, but I'm curious to see how we see some of our synergy cars go in this next session, because not only was that 161 laps down 500 last year pretty boring on account of no safety cars, but also just the sheer domination from that team. Those guys obviously know something that no one else does around here. Obviously, you've got the likes of Josh Muggleton, who we saw in quali just come out and be stupidly quick in a straight line, but it's not just about ripping wing out of the thing. You've got to have a setup that drives. As I say, you've got so many tight first and second gear corners that lead onto long straights. You can have no drag, but you've got to have a car that drives well as well. So it really has to be a complete setup, and I think those SSR boys have something there.
That's right. We saw that 161 laps of domination. We felt that one. We knew exactly what happened there. We had to experience all of that. It was not taking anything away. It was a mega drive from Jared and Dane out in front. It was just one of those. They just had the car that was just on rails that whole race. So definitely right about that. Those SSR cars will be quick. We'll be sure to watch them out. As out comes the field of the second qualifying session here for round 3 of the championship, and let's see what these guys have got. Lianic, was super quick in obviously last weekend in practice again. Obviously, unfortunately, wasn't able to take the victory as we ride on board with him. All getting set. It's a young star, and he's showing these boys what he can do.
How brilliant is that too, to have him being so young and so talented too. Like, he's rise and don't adjust your sets. That's actually a live shot from his cam. So, you know, he's shown how quick he is. He's definitely put himself in the right part of the championship at the moment. So it's going to be good to ride on board with him and see how he takes this on over the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, let's see how he gets it done. 15 minutes all on the line for all these guys now in the final session for today. And let's see who starts to light them up. They've all got draft, which is quite interesting to see, isn't it, Jake? They've all decided to, no one sort of skipped away. They all wanted to play, let's group up and go.
Well, that's it, Jake. Like I said, you're not going to turn down a free 3.5 tenths. So, yeah, everyone's out there trying to get it. Just got to make sure they stay on sequence and put the rest of the lap together. Sandman alluded to this earlier, but, you know, you've got cars in front of you. You can't see your apexes quite as well. You're going to get a little bit of aero push as you come through 6. You're going to be, you know, trying to pull the car up from a few Ks faster in every braking zone. It is not an easy 3.5 tenths to get. So keen to see how these guys put it together for the rest of this session.
Especially the opening laps. That opening lap session, you've had a 15, 20-minute break maybe from practice. You're not sort of clipped in straight away into the car as soon as you get back in. Yes, these guys do multiple laps, many laps from the session. But it's that one time where you go, okay, I've just had 20 minutes, and you've got to get back into it and go and push out a quality lap. Sometimes you just need that lap or two in the car to set yourself up. Hayden Bell does it straight to the top. Neither does Rick Kuznetsov. He betters in Dylan O'Shire as well. He goes P number 2 as the times start to tumble, and we said it, Muggleton was 3rd, he's now 8th, and those guys in the top 10 are now outside of it as the field has set it up. Elias Brian Lianic went into P6, Sean McNamara into 7th, as these guys just set it straight away, Sandman, from the word go.
You can almost hear the sigh of relief from those drivers because they know that they've put in that banker and it's put them there or thereabouts for that first lap. So if they look at the timesheets and say that they're sort of input on a set of Dunlops, let's see if we can improve on it.
One of these guys may be going for a second lap, and I'm only just saying that because they're doing a better middle sector, which is where the draft will come in. So these guys can go, okay, maybe if I can line up, if I didn't have a bad first second. Oh, I think that was that Rian that ran wide? I think it was too. He ran it deep into turn number 9. He's going to have to bail out of that one. That'll be 4 fresh tyres and go again. Next set, but let's see if anyone decides to finish off the second lap. I think no one is, because I see a lot of people coming into pit lane.
Yeah, I was looking at the timesheets and it's all going up orange. Yep. In. So it's like, yep. And like you said, they'll probably decide to push on. I guess you've got nothing to lose when you're halfway, when you make it, I guess that decision to make it back to pit lane, push on and see what happens. And it's like Jake said, if you get a little bit of that sneaky toe and you know you're going to be up on what you've already laid down, sometimes you think, let's just push on. Even if I lose half a tenth in that last couple of corners, it might be worth just pushing on to grab that little bit of toe that you gained on that lap.
That's exactly right. And to gain that little bit, like Jake's been alluding to, it's 3.5, 4 tenths of a second. There's so much time to be gained around here with 2 long straights and a couple of twisty bits in between. you can easily gain that time. Andrew Dyson right now looks like he'll just be coming back in the pit lane, getting 4 fresh sets. He's sort of all by himself, Jake, at the moment. It's a little bit interesting to know, especially with a couple of his other teammates in this session, that he's sort of just by himself.
Yeah, must have not been too happy with that sort of first lap, and then, you know, has decided to rush out and not try and get toe and that sort of thing. I know Dyson will want to be a little bit higher than what he is at the moment. He's currently sitting 13th, probably as a driver who could be up in the top 5 in a session like this. So maybe just trying to reset the brain, not give himself too many distractions, just go and drive the lap.
Yeah, I think that's really just get out of the way of everyone else. And some people can do that. They can just drive it by themselves without the draft and do what you can and try and gain that time that way. But here we go. Here comes the train into the last sector. We saw this before, Sam, man. I feel like we're back here again 1 year later. We're coming in. It's not even a year later. It's like 6 months later, and now these guys are all going to jostle for positions. No one's going to slow down to under the, I think we have the 60k limit rule so far in the season. So I think they're all going to just line up with how they are and have the second shot at it.
Yeah, thankfully it's a little bit different from at the moment. They haven't got any other traffic around them to worry about. So you can see all of them, they're pretty much all pitted together. They've all done their out lap together, and now they're all starting their fast lap together. So it's good to see. It stops that congestion, because there's nothing worse for a driver when they're on a hot lap and then you come across traffic. I know every driver just holds their breath. Even if drivers get out of the way for them, it still does play on your mind, and it's easy to make a mistake.
It's very easy to make a mistake, especially around here. Like Jake said, that whole first sector turn that we've just come through. Oh, and as I say that, that's one of the 9.5 Sim Sports cars. That's ran straight off the road. He's put himself in the barrier. That's Sean McNamara. Can he get that one rejoined? I don't think he can. And that actually puts you off, doesn't it? You're in that position. You're on a hot lap and you see a car off the road, don't you, Jake? And you go, where do I go from here? You just sort of hesitate that little bit.
It's just that split second that your eyes sort of dart off to it, and it doesn't always make a difference. There are drivers who can handle it and deal with it, but it's really, really tough when you have a distraction like that, you know, pulling you out of the way there.
Yeah, it just throws you off that little bit. And Hoshoya was like, that lap was not good enough. It's not going to improve. So he's darted back into pit lane. And this is where we're going to see a couple of these guys go into pit lane. But Dylan runs straight to the top with a 107.1 and basically identical to Rian Lianic, straight to the top. Takes that spot by 1,000ths of a second. It's on at the top already.
Mate, he'd be absolutely stoked with that. When you see that, you don't care how much the margin is. If you see your name on top, you go, beautiful, I'll take that.
They've rejoined after last week at Hockenheim. They're back again. Let's round 2, line them up and go again. 1-2 at the moment. Lianic and Rudd up the top. Kuznetsov jumped himself up into P3. That sort of split the field up a little bit too, didn't it? We saw a couple of guys dart into pit lane to get some fresh tyres. It's going to split up this field for this next second part of this qualifying session, Sam, man.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the times too from that first split session. I guess our pole sitter at that stage was Brian Borg. He's now slipped back to 7th place at the moment. So he'd be keeping a mindful watch on this just to see, oh, look, am I going to slop down a little bit more, or am I going to hold position? He'd be very keen for this session to wrap up pretty quickly.
Yeah, he's only got roughly just under 7 minutes to go. Just over it, I should say. Sorry, 7 minutes left in the session, as that was Vandel. Looked like he maybe had a little bit of a brake lock into the last sector. He's going to pull it into pit lane and get out of the way. A couple of these guys now coming down onto pit lane. But yeah, like you said, just in it. He shouldn't be too unhappy. He's only just under 0.2 of a second now, actually off the top step, Jake. And we said the track temps come down a little bit, but you shouldn't be too upset with that. Only to be just under 0.2 off the top at the moment.
Yeah, on the other end of the triangle though, it's the problem you got is there's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to sit there and watch it, and that's as painful as anything, to be honest. You know, he may only be 7th now, but there's endless potential, I guess, of people to go faster than him, and 0 potential of him going any faster. So that's one of the difficult things. So we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago as well about these split qualifying sessions, is that you just don't really know how fast everyone's going to be if you're not in that second session. So, yeah, really, really tough one for Borgie. Hope he manages to stay in the 10th.
And that's also right. It could play on your mental a little bit of going, maybe I could have gained a 10th too because of the track cooling off, or I could have had a better lap here and it moved me up a little bit further. But he's just going to sit and watch everything drop. So it puts him in that position where he's just going to sit there, and he's currently fighting to hold on to that P number 10 and inside that top 10, in P number 7 as we look at these guys coming around, as we look at Andrew Dyson. He is getting set to start another lap. He's just come out of pit lane into turn number 1 and just rolling around to get those tyres set up. Ashaya was on a lap, but he is actually aborted that lap, Sandman, and brought it down the pit lane from P number 4 so far. So a couple of these guys getting set for their third fast lap.
Interested that Dyson is all by himself. Whether he just wants that track space around him, I don't know what the way mindset is, but yeah, it's interesting to see him just not really sort of chasing anyone to help him at the moment. Does that strike you as a little bit strange, Jake, from a driver's point of view?
A little bit, but again, if you're a driver, and I was actually just looking at Dyson's car, it looks like it's running a little bit low in the back. I don't know if maybe I'm just dreaming that, but I don't know if maybe he's one of those guys who's pulled a bunch of aero out of his car, and obviously the less wing that you're running and the less rake and that sort of thing, and the faster your car is in a straight line, the less you're going to benefit from tow. So he might feel that he just doesn't need it. But again, I think honestly it's just, you know, a distraction sometimes. It is definitely beneficial for you, but if you're trying to find maybe half a tenth or a tenth, you might not find it with tow.
Might not find it with tow, but these guys are definitely finding it. Kuznetsov fastest first sector, not a good middle sector, and the middle sector is basically the entire back straight. The first sector is basically from turns all the way from start-finish line to just after turn 4. He's actually going to bring it into pit lane after setting the first. Dylan Rudd's going to finish his lap time. It's basically identical to what he did before. It's not going to actually improve position though, even though it is only just a tenth slower, under a 100 slower. Hayden Veld moves himself up though into P number 4 with under 5 minutes left in this session. There's a couple of guys I think further down the field that'll be looking to try and improve. Darnell's one of them. He's currently in P number 17 as he moves over to let one of the Evolution Racing Team cars through. It's coming down to the wire. I think we're going to be looking at Dyson, Ashaya. They're sort of on their own at the moment, aren't they, Sandman? And see what they can do to try and muddle up this top 5 at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of surprises there, aren't there? But yeah, what are we? So we've already got 3.5 minutes to go. So it's definitely coming down to crunch time. So they need to, you know, either decide whether they're going to push on or whether they're going to head back to the lane and just go again. I think if I was in that position, I'd be down in the pits. I'd be putting on a new set of tyres and I'd be starting to just roll around and get ready for that final dash at the end.
Especially if you know this next lap that you may be on that doesn't improve, you just bring it in straight away. You need to try and get that last lap in. You need to just try and go, okay, this one's not going to work. I'm not going to waste any more time. There is no time to waste right now. These guys need to get the laps done, get it back around into pit lane. Obviously, Dyson's a little bit of a worry down in 16th. He's been so consistent all season as a couple of these guys are like, no, I'm going to follow you. I don't want to play this game. We're just going to sit here and follow around. And they can do that. There's a little bit of a gap out there on the racetrack. But yeah, Dyson's one of those ones that's sort of shocked me a little bit, Sam. And all the way down in 16th, he has had good pace and has been pretty consistent inside the top 5 points as well all season.
Absolutely, and it's a different, we touched on it before, it's a different mindset here at Sandown. You know, in the past, you wouldn't worry about too much qualifying as far as where you were because, hey, it's a long race, 161 laps. Different story tonight. It's all about a sprint race now. So these guys know that if they are way down the back of the pack, it's going to really put the pressure on them as far as how many laps they're going to take to get to the front. And if they're safety cars, I mean, like we saw 161 laps around here without a safety car. So who knows what's going to happen in the sprint race.
And that's also one of the things is you put yourself in the danger zone of being involved in the safety car, if there is one. You get involved in that incident. Turns 2, 3, we've touched on it. It's so tight. The opening lap feels like there's not even a car width's room. And as I say that, Stanny has taken all of the inside curb and then decided I need to try and save this car. It's so easy to do there, isn't it, Jake? You take too much of the curbs, turns 2, 3, and it throws you all the way into that outside wall on the guardrail in turn 3.
Well, it sort of extends from what I was talking about before, Jake. Like, you know, everyone thinks you've got to have a fast straight line car here, but you really do need a complete car. You need a car that slows good. You need a car that, you know, has decent direction change. You've also got to have one that rides the curbs decently, especially through that second chicane and then the latter half of the lap as well. So Steady, another one who I actually really think should be higher in this session. He's done really well this season to sort of bounce back from some bad luck and some curses from Sandman and the like. But yeah, I really think he'll be hoping to be higher than 20th.
Yeah, I think he would have been the same. I think he'd be hoping to be somewhere inside that top 10 at least. He has been very good in the qualifying series so far. But I love that. All the little games these guys are playing in the last corner. I don't want draft. I'm not going to go. So we're all not going to go. And then the leader pulls in the pit lane. I don't know which one it was. One of them did. They pulled in and went, yeah, well, I'm not going, so you're not. So it was all a bit of fun and games into that last sector. Under a minute left. This will be their final lap time. Stenberg needs to try and see if he can improve. He's just going to actually latch onto the back of his train. A couple of people improving with some personal best. Robert Gibbs has done so as well. Kuznetsov, though, to the top, and he's going to take the original pole away right at the death with a 107.072, puts himself half a tenth to the top.
Mate, and to the leaders that were leading at the time of that session, are they kicking themselves now they went into pit lane? Who knows? But, you know, hey, if you can still be in touch, top 3, top 5, you'll take it. But they may be kicking themselves a little bit.
And here comes O'Shea as well. He's put in 2 personal bests, so this should be an improvement. He's 2 tenths off the top. You only need a couple of tenths in terms of draft pace. Where's this going to put him? Comes across the stripe, and there it is, straight to the top. Beats him at the death, 107.055. A hundredths of a second over Kuznetsov. We were talking about him all being on his own, so he managed to get a draft and get it done at the death.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to watch. Like you said, to do it by yourself and then to get the job done. I love this, the violent flashing of lights. Dyson there, he's crumpled to the 11th place. But yeah, that was a brilliant job and got top of the timesheets, but still a couple of cars to go.
Still a couple of cars to finish up the lap. Gibbs with the light flashing. Not sideways from Ratu. That lap's going to be done. Yep. That's going to be straight in the pit lane and day done for that. Dyson did improve. We're saying he was down in 16th, hovering around there. He improved to 11th. I don't think that'll be enough Hayden Felds on a lap, but I think, yeah, that one's done. He's not taking that Haas. That definitely is a slow roll down 6, 7, and 8 down the hill. Lets it up on the rallycross berm, as we call, and lets it a bit sideways. Hayden Bell should be happy with a P number 5 from the SSR car, but O'Shea straight at the death gets the job done, and I think that will be the end of the session. What a session at the end, Seb.
Yeah, absolutely, and interesting to say that the times from the top, as I say, incident coming in the lane, but anyway, the times at the top for that last session was Brian Borg, 7th place. Johnston is now in 10th, and Muggleton, who was 3rd, is down in 13th. So again, it's one of those hard luck stories, isn't it? So you've already made your bed, you got to sleep in it, and you can't do anything about improving it. You just got to watch your times tumble down. How hard is that, Jake, when you see your name just slipping down the entry list?
Yeah, and I feel so bad for Muggo because that happened to him in the first round as well, if you remember. Yes. And that's the problem. Like, you keep having this happen. You're sort of stuck in this cycle of being just outside the points in the championship. So then you get smacked down with that rough qualifying again. But I guess now, if you're not one of those cars in the top 10, you rip every degree of wing out of it and just see what you can do with it.
Mate, as well, you got nothing to lose, don't you? Especially when you're a little bit further in the pack. As we look at that grid lineup, Dylan O'Shea takes the pole position for round 3 of the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational. Rick Kuznetsov will line up alongside Richard Lianich will roll off row 2 with Dylan Rudd alongside the Hockenheim battle. May resume from row 2. Hayden Veld, Bradley Ratu, Brian Borg, Robert Gibbs, Sebastian Bundell, and Damien Johnstone round out that top 10. Andrew Dyson, just on the outside with Sean McNamara rounding out row number 6 with Josh Muggleton, who we just touched on. I think he may be taking a little bit more wing out of it and trying to get maybe 12 to 13 Ks out of it. Angus, Kins, Mitchison, Ladder, Freeman, Island, and Flock round out the top 20. The rest of the drivers on your screen. As you touched on, Sam Ed, maybe it is time to make a little adjustment and try and take some wing out for some of these guys further down the pack. Don't have a lot of time to get the job done.
And how does the mindset change, Jake? Because like I said, every time we come here, normally it's an endurance race, 161 laps, but their mindset now has to change because all of a sudden it's a sprint round. They know they need to make the most of tonight because next week we head to Mount Panorama. And if you are struggling to get inside that cutoff line, you don't want to be heading to Bathurst with that pressure on your shoulders.
Well, that's it, Sam. And the thing is, a lot of these guys might have run, co-driver in the last rendition of this race. And this truck's only been in the service for about a year. So some of these guys might not have even qualified for this track before. Some might not have even started a race here. So I think, it's just a matter of thinking, all right, I need to be in that top 10, top 15 and just stay out of trouble. I think that's going to be the key to this one.
And is there excitement as far as this being a sprint round? Because like I said, it's totally different. You worry about 161 laps. You don't care about qualifying. You've got to rely on a co-driver. But when it's a sprint race, do these guys get excited about the opportunity to do a sprint round around Sandown?
Oh, no question about it. I think, you know, one of my favourite things about watching this track back in the day in the real Supercars was the fact that, you know, they used to do the co-driver sprint race as part of qualifying, and it was so awesome to watch. So there'll be a bit of that for these guys. But the other thing is, it's still a 65-lap race. It is actually quite a long race, 2 pit stops to worry about. So, yeah, definitely a fun sprint race, but you still got to keep your head screwed on.
I think that's one thing we've got to keep in fact is it is 65 laps around here, but that will go quick, roughly a minute, just over a minute 10 a lap, or just under, sorry, a minute 10 a lap time. It will go fast. Shaya Kuznetsov on that front row. Not long now until we get going for round 3 of the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational. I'm looking forward to this. And like you touched on, Jake, those sprint races when they had the co-drivers in, it was amazing around Sandown. I think this track really, obviously, it sets itself up well for endurance racing. It sets itself up well for sprint racing, and it's going to have to set itself up once again for another crazy race as we get ready for round 3 of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational Qualifying Series. It's a Shire and Kuznetsov, and we are green for round 3. And it looks like a good jump from both of them on the front row, but Ratu from row number 3 is gone.
This is always a hairy part, isn't it, coming into turn 1? Some of them 3 and 4 wide through there. The last thing they need is contact. Oh, just as I say that, they're off track. Looks like everyone's still pointing in the right direction. Contact. Oh, how much damage are those guys going to have? They've got to be careful. That's not what you want to see. Lap 1 of 65.
Had to cut to the grass. That was one of the DPR cars. He just had to do it. One of the fishy motorsports cars was sideways out of turn 1, managed to regain and keep going. Somehow they're all straight. We're not seeing a car face the other way. Shaya Kuznetsov off of Ratu with a jump from row 3, Jake. What a start from him.
Yeah, really mixed start. One that I kept my eyes on back in the pack was Kurt Stenberg. He had just about the worst start I've ever seen. He lost about 8 or 9 spots before he got down to turn 1. Managed to get a few back. This is not an easy track with the changing surface that's had about 7 different renditions down the main straight here at Sandown. It is not an easy track to put the power down.
I think he actually fell foul to that, and obviously Ratu got the good strip of it because he just jumped from that outside of that row. He was gone. You could see it from the word go. Straight away jumped to the outside, basically jumped all of row 2. Dylan Ray and Lianage were just standstill. Got around them too, put himself up in the P number 3 as Phillip comes down front straight. A clean opening lap, mind you, a couple of bent cars, but they're clean.
Yeah, I love that first lap when everyone's all bunched together. They're all single file. They're just trying to calm the nerves a little bit because it's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of this race. And, of course, you start thinking about where you are in the points and who's in front of you, who's behind you, whether the guy behind you is fast. And it's all about just settling those nerves down and just getting yourself into a little bit of a groove.
I think that's as well what these guys will be wanting to do. Dylan Shire leads them, but all behind him is just a bunch of 9.5 Sim Sports cars. Then you got the Pursuit Sim Sports cars of Rehan as well. He's there in P number 5. But look at the battle. This is the thing. You can't skip away here, can you, Jake? When you're in the draft, you cannot get away if you're the car out in front.
No, definitely not. And you need to think about that a little bit. Again, we've got 2 pit stops to deal with tonight. There's a little bit of strategy in this. We need to think about, do I really want to be leading this race at this point? Do I want to be using that extra 100 mils of fuel every lap? Because it will come back to bite you. We saw that at Phillip Island, how, you know, leading in the early stage of the race doesn't always guarantee that you're going to win it. So, going to be a interesting race for sure.
I think that's right as well. We've got to think about that. The fuel saving that'll be going on with these guys all in the draft. If they want to make up ground, they know they have a quick car, they will do it. But if they don't, and Taliancic makes a move on Island into turn 1, Island's car has been beaten pillar to post already. It's 65 laps ahead of him. The car looks like it's hit the fence about 50 times.
Yeah, the scary part is that too. We touched on that aero draft and how many kilometres you can pick up in a line. Well, guess how many kilometres that can hurt when you've got damage like that. Like, that's a bit sad and sorry, isn't it, for lap 1 or lap 2 or lap 3 now of this race?
Yeah, it's going to hurt him for the whole race. He's just going to have to play it out, try and see if he can get anything back in the pit stops. But there's not a big, long pit stop where you can go, okay, I can get a couple of 10, 20 seconds of quick repairs done while the car's putting fuel in it or something like that. You can't do that. You don't have the luxury of doing it in a sprint race. You have to manage your fuel, you have to manage your own and make sure that your standstill time is as short as possible. Isn't that right, Jake? And you've got to make sure that you capitalize on that so you can't really repair any damage you have.
That's right, yeah. These guys just need to think pretty smart. At the end of the day, we're in the back end of the season now. And, you know, a second, a third, that's not a bad outcome. Like, you can afford to sit there, save some fuel. Maybe challenge for that win at the end of the race, but I think for now, you're not going to see anyone really trying to make the move on Dylan here because it doesn't really make sense to.
No, I don't think it does. I think we're going to see a massive train, and it's going to continue like this for quite a while until pit stop starts, which I think in this case we'll be looking at roughly, we said this last time at Phillip Island, and I feel like we say it all the time, is that they could change it up as we look at Hayden Bell. Got the game face on as he goes down the hill. It's good to have this addition. Hopefully we get to see more of this, especially in the Pro Series later this year. Is obviously, and one thing as well, Jake, you see him, he's looking left, he's looking right in terms of his eyes. You can see maybe looking in the mirror. You don't even realize you're doing it until you watch yourself back on a stream and realize I've been looking everywhere but where I was meant to be looking.
I've never understood these guys who sim race in a totally dark room. I know you do it, Sandman. I know your room's pretty dark in there, but I just don't get it. I feel like it's so bright and so shiny on your face. So I don't know how these guys do it, but it seems to be working all right for him at the moment.
I know for me, it's more of an immersion thing. I think if I've got the triple screens going and it's all dark, I feel like I'm really in that cabin and I'm just racing away. So I guess everyone's different, and it's the old theory too about, do people race with shoes? Do people race with socks? Do people race barefoot? You know, there's all those different things about driver comfort. Hey, and if it works for you, that's the main thing.
I feel like that's the thing as well. I'm definitely like you, Jake. I've got to have the lights on and be lit up because the LEDs just blind you in the face. And Rian's the same. He's got the room lit up, got all his data right to his right-hand side on his laptop there, so that he can understand what's going on through the race. And that's one of the things people love to have the timing up. Some people don't. It's all just a play on what you feel comfortable with. I'm definitely. As well, creature comforts, like you said, Sandman. Some people do love to have the boots, the gloves, everything else. Some people don't. It just doesn't suit them. But we're already ticking down the laps. Lap 6 completed. Start of lap 7. It's still Dylan out in front because Net's up behind. And I think, like Jake has touched on all this race, Sandman, we're going to be in for a bit of a fuel-saving just draft and just not challenge for the lead because you don't want to burn the fuel at the moment.
Absolutely. It's like a big game of chess now, isn't it? And for these guys up front, if what they want to do is just hit their marks, see that they're in touch with everyone around them, and what you want to do ideally is see whoever's behind you getting smaller in the rearview mirror. So, and these guys, it's all about just hitting their marks and just watching those laps and then just thinking about, right, we know our pit stop's going to be at whatever lap that they're thinking. Of course, that can all change with the safety car, whether that happens or not, but I do love that they're just sort of getting into a rhythm now, hitting their marks and just starting to think about that race and how they think it may play out.
And that's sort of the part of the race now. Oh, as it looked like there was an inside front lock down into Danny Lock. I think it was Rehan. He is dropping down the order. He has made a mistake. Oh no, he's in the fence. Something happened. I think he brake locked and ran a little bit wide. He may have got a touch from the rear. He's just trying to regain, get the car back going. He's done a good job. Now he's just going to set up the nerves and get back out there. He's dropped down to P number 26, make that 27 as Island goes around. He's just going to have to see what he can gain back. We'll get a replay up of that as soon as we can, but he's pretty calm there. I would have been throwing everything out the window, but he's straight back in the rhythm and off he goes.
And it's so important to keep his nerve. He did the right thing because he knows he's had a good couple of rounds. He's got points up in his back pocket, so he doesn't have to stress it. All he's done, he's got, right, he's had a little bit of a moment. Oh, he's just got up on that ripple strip. Oh, did he get help? Yes, he did.
Yeah, it's one of those things he can't, and it's hard. The two cars behind him was Hayden Veld and Robert Gibbs. Veld actually was on the brake mid-corner because he realised Rehan had the mistake, and then Gibbs was in the back of him, which just then pushed Veld into Rehan and around he went. I think that's one of those things you can't avoid, isn't it, Jake? When you're the third or fourth car in a train like that, when it's so close, one person makes a mistake, you may be unsighted. A lot of people don't realise, some people may be on a single or a triple, you're still unsighted, you're still cockpit driven, you sometimes can't see around in front. Perfect time. You cannot sometimes see the cars in front.
Yeah, that's it. And that's one of those corners as well, that it's very much a one-line corner. And once you've committed to turning in, you can't really slow the car up suddenly. It's got so much, rear stability issues as you turn in on the way there. I don't think Hayden had really anywhere to go, nor did Robert Gibbs. I think that was one of those ones where Rehan decided to go bungee jumping, but those guys chopped the rope, unfortunately. So, yeah, hopefully Rehan can get back into it and finish this thing strong.
I'm sure he will. He has pace. He will get the jobs done and start moving up through the field. I think he already has. He's 26 at the moment. He's gotten past Chris Island. Let's see what he can gain as this race progresses. So if you look a bit further back, Jamie Dyatt, one of the Fishy Motorsports cars, they were all in at walls on lap 1, and one of them was around, but they've all managed to get going and straight up. But this is just outside the top, just outside the top 20. This is inside the top 20 at the moment. Jamie Dyatt, Sebastian Flock in front of him with his teammate Whiting behind him as well. And when you're in this sort of a train, you know that you're going to lose the top end, Sam, man, because you've sort of lost that leading group train. Now it sort of gets in a position of, I've got to save fuel.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted by that too, is when you start to see the pack pulling away from you, and you know your hands are tied a little bit, you're in a little battle with yourself, and then all these guys out front are just starting to pull away. But I guess at this point in the time, it's funny how Jake touched on it before, how we're halfway through the series. It's only sort of round 3, but that is the beauty of this qualifying series. Puts these guys in a bit of pressure. They know they have to perform, but at the end of the day, they just need to think about the big picture and just not stress about the little things, and just try and capitalise on what may happen in this race. It's still very early days. We don't know what's going to happen with these leaders. They all may come together. They may stick each other in the fence. People may detonate motors. We may see safety cars. You just don't know.
We don't know, and there's still 56 laps to go, a little bit more than that with these guys out in front. This leading group has sort of closed up a little bit. Yes, they lost a car or two, especially Hayden Feld. When he was around, but now that they're closing back up, Robert Gibbs has got some damage to the front of his car as well, obviously from that nose to tail contact, because Kuznetsov is just a watch you breathe to Dylan O'Shire at the moment out in front. He knows he's going to have this advantage, Sandman, when it comes to pit stops, and wouldn't it be playing on Dylan's head knowing I don't really want to be leading, but I don't really want to give up and put myself second. It's a hard place to be right now.
It's one of those things, I guess, if you're a driver and you are focused mainly on that win, then yeah, it starts to mess with you a little bit. With this series, you don't, as much as we're all racers, we all love to get that checkered flag first, but it's all about capitalising on a good points day too. So if you don't get the win and you finish maybe second, third, or just outside the top 5, now banking all those points just so you can get to the big game in a couple of months' time.
And that's basically what they're all fighting on the moment, is just being in the money to get the position for the Pro Series later on in the year. And it's the top 20 that we take. So these guys are still fighting to get into that top 10. It's Dyson right now, just in P number 10. He's trying to make up some ground. He's only gained 1 spot from it. He's going to go to the inside of Muggleton. Down the hill through 6 and 7, a little bit of contact. That's going to send Muggleton wide. He's most probably going to have to serve a slowdown penalty. Dyson's shaking his head over that one. A little bit of contact mid-corner, and there goes the light flash from Muggo. Let's see how this one plays out as they go through turns 11 and 12.
Ooh, that is a scary part of the racetrack to go side by side through there. That that normally never works. So, mate, that was hairy stuff. We'll go to a replay. You can see he was setting up down that back straight. And I think Muggleton maybe probably thought that he's probably not going to stick it up the inside, but sure enough, he has. Did they have any contact? Oh, it's hard to, because that car on the inside is up on the curb too. Yeah. So Muggleton did a great job not for that to fire off into the fence. And of course, you could see from that rear view camera here, it just shows how excited he was about that position change, and flashed his headlights.
He gave the old code of, I didn't like that, but we'll keep going and fight on and keep going for the rest of this race. But Muggleton had to set the slowdown, so it sort of rolled him out a little bit. You could see as soon as he got through turn 9, then he had to roll out and just tap the brake just to slow it down and get the pace out of the car, because he knows he wasn't going to serve that slowdown. Someone's come off the road in front of the leaders, and unsure who that was. I didn't quite catch a number or what car that was, but he was off the road. Shire at the moment. Must have been Vcock that was off the road. Oh no, this is Vcock. Must have been Schultz. One of them was off the road in front of the leaders as we look back through the field. But it's just one of those situations. Again, that leading group, as I was just about to touch on, is all back together. There is 8 cars now in the leading train that are all knocked together, and it is Schultz bringing the car around the pit lane. It's got a lot of damage to that Ford Mustang. Hopefully he brings it straight down the pit lane without getting in anyone's way off the exit, and he does so. And does a good job of that. But look at this. This is a train and a half, isn't it? And it's only lap 12.
Yeah, and what they're doing these guys that are, obviously they are touched on how strong this draft is, bringing them behind them. So we are starting to get a little bit of a freight train, and that may change as we get closer to those pit stops too.
Where would you want to be in this battle right now, Jake? Obviously not leading, because you'd rather be saving fuel. I think that's where we'd all like to be. But would you rather be a little bit further back, just in case something happens and you can maybe adjust your strategy on who does what in front of you, like jump in a lap early? Because, fresh tyre advantage is not going to be too bad, but in terms of how much you're going to gain, but it's still an advantage.
Nah, I want to be Rick at that time at the moment, to be honest. Being in that position where you've got track position, because one of the really quick guys in the last few laps has actually been Sean McNamara. He's really pulled in these guys, and he's got a lot of speed. But realistically, if he wants to win this race, he's got to pass 6 more cars, which can be done in pit lane with a bit of work and that sort of thing. But really, track position is still king at the end of the day. And I think Rick Kuznetsov's in the perfect position where he's saving a bunch of fuel, but he's still got track position. He's only got to pass one guy. So, going to be an interesting one. I think you'll start to see guys like McNamara start to make moves as soon as they get the opportunity.
And that's one thing as well, like you touched on. He's only got to pass one car to Rick Kuznetsov in P2. And that car, he knows, is burning more fuel than him at the moment because he's lifting, he's managing his fuel with the draft at the moment. So he knows he could actually get that without having to do it on the racetrack. So at the moment, Kuznetsov pretty much in this box seat. But Jake could be saving a little bit as well. And saying, man, it's one of those situations. Look at this pack. This train is going to be going on for the whole race, I think. We've obviously got the top 8 in this battle pack, but then you can just see in the background when it starts coming, there's the rest of the field, as we just saw. 9 through the however many after there's another train starting to form as well.
Yeah, it's the old adage, isn't it? It's a high-speed game of chess, and these guys, we don't know how this is going to play out as far as how far they're going to be able to stretch it on fuel mileage, and for the people that are saving behind them, how much longer they might decide to go, or even if they go to put on fresh tyres. But Jake, from a driver's point of view, when we're talking about this series in particular, it's only 4 rounds. How hard is it to tell a driver not to worry about going for the win and just concentrate on banking points for a good points day?
Oh, unbelievably hard. You can't shut down that instinct, Sam, man. And it's funny, not to talk about a different game or a different series or anything, but there was a pretty significant sim racing event over in Poland on the weekend. And race winner of this series last year, Dane Warren, he was in that same boat over there where, all he had to do was finish in the top 6, and he got caught up in a battle for the win and ends up out of his final. So, even the best make that mistake. So it's really a matter of just calming yourself down, realizing not only is it, only 1 round to go in the series, but there's also still 45 odd laps left to go in this race. It's still a long way to go. Just play it smart, save some fuel, keep yourself in that race.
And as a driver, do you want to be reminded about not going for the win, or you because in the back of your mind what the big picture is?
I think it depends on the driver, to be honest. Like for me, I like to have someone control my emotions a bit for me. Those scenarios where I'm in Supercars E Series or something like that, and I have a professional race engineer, one of those people who knows how to calm people down. That's fantastic. But if I've got just my mate screaming in my ear telling me to calm down, it's probably not going to be all that much help. But, I think it depends a lot on the driver and who's spotting as well to make some big difference. You've got to make that judgment call. Engineers, spotters, they're almost psychologists in roundabout ways as well.
It's definitely I like how you put it, that they're psychologists, because they are. A lot of the times I've done stuff like that as well, where you're spotting and you're just trying to calm the driver down to make sure that they focus on what the end goal is. It might not always be just the race win, it could just be picking up points, like especially in this championship at the moment, looking to it where I just unplug it and go, no, screw you, I'm going to do what I want to do. It doesn't usually work out well, but I think we've all done it where we're so fired up sometimes that it's just focus on what you want to do, get the win, do this, do that. But sometimes there's always that outer picture that's looking at more than just what's in front of you on the racetrack, what's the next 5 laps in terms of what you're looking at. They're looking at the whole race distance, the championship, everything else that's going on around you, and it's such a difficult task to take away from. And I think that's where a lot of these guys that do so well in everything, and like you touched on, Jake, as well, with obviously that battle, the best do it. The best can do it at any moment, and these guys that can always just sometimes just turn it off and just do, okay, let's just do what we need to do and then get back into focus. It's tough. It's very tough. But these guys right now, they're all focused right now on this race. Because Kuznetsov, as we go by as the cam, love this shot, especially around Sandown. And at the moment, he's just chilling right now, Sandman, in P2, and I think that's what this is going to be until this first pit stop.
Yeah, we touched on it plenty of times. It'd be good to be in this position right now where you're just cruising. You're just thinking about how the race is playing out. You know you're pretty happy, you know, when you're in touch with the leaders, or if you are a leader, you know, when you're up in that point and you're not got that pressure behind you, that's a really good position to be. And it's all about now just ticking those laps off and just saying, right, we're going to start thinking about lap stops at pit stops at lap certain, whatever it might be. They haven't really given away too much, but that's the beauty of being in this position. It's just sort of eyes forward, and now it looks like a little bit of lap traffic possibly. So that's always good when you're P2, because you can let the leader deal with the lap traffic.
Exactly, let the leader deal with the lap traffic, get them out of the way, and try and make sure that they're the ones that makes the move and has to push the lap car out of the way. And I guess it's always hard, especially when you're the leader. Your first car that comes up to it, they may not be recognising that they're coming faster cars behind them. They should all be running with a relative online juice, so they should all know when the fast car's coming, as well as blue flags. But one thing I just want to touch on, and one thing that I'm looking at through the field's starting to sort of accordion back together. There was sort of a gap forming that we had between Sean McNamara and Andrew Dyson, but Dyson's got such good car speed, he's actually brought the rest of the field with them. And as you can see on the track map, there used to be a gap between 8 and 9 back, and as you can see, there isn't really much left, is there, Jake? And I think that's from that draft effect. It's roughly a second and a half. I can't remember what the actual gap is, but it's pulled the rest of them together.
Yeah, that's it. I think I was actually a little bit disappointed that Dyson and Muggo came together before. I think it was pretty clumsy on sort of both of their behalves, to be honest, because both of those cars were so fast and they were bringing in that top 6 or 7 so quickly, and they just hurt themselves so bad. Now they have managed to get themselves back in the piece, but at what cost in terms of fuel, at what cost in terms of damage and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I really hope that these two can make something this race, because these two are definitely two guys who should be contending for this win.
Yeah, and I've been looking at the lap times, and obviously they've been the ones that have been closing down the pace between this sort of top 8 cars and the rest of the field. They've been bringing them with him. But we're looking at lap 18, coming up to complete lap 18 of round 3 of the Logitech Supercars Pro Invitational here from Sandown. It is Oshaya, Kuznetsov, Ratu, Rudd, Veld, the top 5. Gibbs, Borg, McNamara, Dyson and Muggleton, who we were just touching on, rounding out the top 10. We're coming into that window now, Sam, end of that first round of pit stop, 65 laps, you chuck it into 3, and you're looking at around like 21 and 22, and as we say, that Dyson runs a little bit wide off of turn number 1. And this is the thing, you're pushing hard, you may have got a little bit of extra, a couple of Ks down the front straight from those in front with the toe, and just ran wide and lost.
Yeah, and we're also at a point too where everyone's sort of getting a feel for their cars too, so they'll be putting their tyres through a bit of pain. We can see a couple of pit stops now happening, so that's Adam Briggs who's leaving the pit lane. So the way that the field concertina's a little bit, and it's funny how it's lap 19, but it does look like the opening laps, doesn't it? It's just that people have decided that, you know, their cars are somewhat comfortable, or some people may be hurting their tyres, and that's how it all changes. But interesting to see that pit stops are already happening on lap 19.
Yeah, pit stops already happening. A couple of those people that you touched on, Briggs, Lianage has also come in, Michael Talianstich as well. He's been one of those guys that have come down pit road and got their stop done. Chris Island, who we saw at damage, Michael Angus. So there's a bunch of guys that have come down. A couple of the early stoppers, Zachary Hanlon and Paul Young, as Thomas Hins now comes on the pit lane. They stopped around like 13 and 12. That's a bit of an early call, wouldn't you say, Jake, in terms of, you know, how this track obviously evolves. Obviously it's new, but you've done a lot of laps around here. How an early stop like that sort of throws you out? Would it just be to get out of traffic and just try and see what you can gain out of traffic?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, we saw O'Shea pit. I'm not sure if we brought that up, but race leader.
Oh yeah, race leader. Missed that. My bad.
So it's there's a little bit of you know, playing around with this that you got to do. For example, Dylan O'Shea, that's a nightmare. He's just come out behind 2 lap cars. That couldn't have gone any worse for a guy who's already probably behind on fuel, and now it is trying to take an undercut to sort of preserve his track position. To come out behind 2 lap cars, that is a disaster.
I think I wasn't concentrating on him because I didn't think he'd come down pit road that early. I wasn't expecting it. That I've completely missed that he came down pit lane. And like you said, look at this, lap traffic. They don't have to let him by. They can fight him as much as they want, especially down here, the place where you don't really want to have a car side by side. We saw it unfold before between Muggleton and Dyson, but O'Shea's got the job done. The guys inside that top 10 will be licking their lips now. They know that they've pretty much they'll be able to judge, okay, he's just pitted and put himself in traffic. I don't want to come in for a little bit later now because I know that I'm going to be in this battle pack. I need to now stretch this stop, Sam, man, to get a couple of laps, maybe a couple of seconds on this pack that you're amongst.
Absolutely. And you know that even if your tyres aren't the best, your times are going to be better than someone who's stuck in lap traffic too. So that'll be playing on their mind. They'll know that they'll be just looking for that little clear bit of racetrack, and then they'll be thinking about, you know, when they pit. They'll obviously have someone in their ear too, quite possibly. These teams will relay messages and say, guess what? Old mate's just pitted, but he's stuck in traffic. We can probably stretch it out for another 2 or 3 laps, because at the time, they're probably keen to probably jump in and pit the next lap. But if it hasn't worked out for them, they'll probably stretch it out for another lap or 2.
And that'll be exactly what's going on under 9.5 Sim Sport. I'm sure they'll all be looking at the top 3 at the moment. Kuznetsov, Ratu and Rudd, they're all in that grade. They lost a little bit of ground with a lap car on Port Young that was sort of in the middle of it. Brian Borg actually comes down into the pit lane. So maybe this was why Ashara pitted. He saw that he was going to catch lap traffic, and now he pulled in to get out of it. And now these guys are going to start getting it. The good thing, though, about these guys is they're blue flags. They have to let the leaders by. They don't have to, but it's usually common courtesy to move out of the way when you're getting a blue flag. Whereas the guys that are back in the pack that are maybe haven't pitted yet, you have to fight them, don't you, Jake? You can't. They can just fight you as hard as they want because they don't have to get the spot up.
Yeah, and to be honest, like as much as it's frustrating when you come up on a car that's off sequence to you, you know, like you say, they don't have to get out of the way. I remember racing in another series last year, and I came out, I was fighting for the lead, and I came out behind Madison Down, who had done some ridiculous strategy to end up where he was. And he told me after the race, he said, I ruined your race, but I did it because I could, you know? Yeah. Like, why not? So, yeah, that's the risk you take by sort of going on or pitting early, but I think ultimately it's going to pay off better for the likes of Rick than it has for Dylan O'Shea.
And in comes the leading 5, mind you, have all come down the pit lane. That's going to let Josh Muggleton take over the race lead. But exactly like you said, Jake, why not like mess up someone else's race that's leading that could then put yourself back into the race? You've got to think of that. You may just want, if I just hold him up a couple of seconds, it brings me back closer. I could gain that position later. It's always the case. You just got to be mindful of that, and I think that's where these guys have all jumped in. Here comes Dylan O'Shea around the last corner right now. All the top 5, all down onto pit lane. They're all exiting now. Will Dylan O'Shea get? I don't think he's going to get many of them, Sam, man. I think he's going to slot in just behind Kuznetsov, but let's see.
Yeah, I was just interested to look at how the field's spread out now, because, you know, not long ago we were talking about how they were all nose to tail. It was almost like an accordion effect, but now that pit stops have played out, there's big gaps between these cars now.
Yeah, I actually got that wrong. It was Bradley Ratu that was the first 9.5 Sim Sports car. I thought it was Kuznetsov, but it was actually Ratu that's jumped a lot of them. He's out in P6. There he is. That's the gap he's got over O'Shea. He's just jumped a lot of them, but I think he may have put in a little bit less fuel. The pit time, 10.5 seconds to Bradley Ratu, 15 seconds was Dylan O'Shea, with the rest of them roughly around 13 to 12 seconds. So he just chucked 5 seconds less fuel in it and said, go, as he's made a mistake. Down at turn 9 as the other cars start to come down. That's Brayley Frid and Sebastian Flock inside that top 5. They've come down on the pit lane as pretty much nearly the entire field has served their first stop.
I think I like the strategy of, you know, Muggleton at the moment. He's just trying to push on to try and see, because at the time of pit stops when they started, they were all starting to be a little bit nose to tail. So he's probably thinking he's at a point where he can stretch it out for another lap or 2. But I guess it's that danger zone, isn't it, where you don't want to leave it too long where the guys behind you have got fresh tyres. I guess that'd be mindful, playing back in his mind, wouldn't it, Jake? As far as not going too long, old brother.
That's the thing. And the other thing for Josh Muggleton is around the time that the Dyson thing happened, he actually was starting to make a few mistakes. I think he'd melted the tyres off that thing a little bit. So a good strategy, sometimes as silly as this sounds, if you do melt the tyres, go long, because you've already killed that stint. That tyre's already got the best going out of it, and you want to minimise the chance of happening again. So you can shorten your later stints as a result. And at the end of the day, Muggo's probably seen, and he's probably had the likes of Richard Hampstead, Brady Myers in his ear, tell him about all the mess coming out of pit lane. Just stay out, get some clear track, and see what happens later in this race.
I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's just plugging away out in front. He's not losing too much time. He is losing time in terms of lap time, but he is just going to open it up. He took a lot of turn 2 curb on the inside there. He's pushing on, but I think that you can see the tyres about as Kurt's. Stenberg came down in the pit lane. He's got his stop. Jackson getting ready to go back out again. In amongst the rest of the train, so there's one TTR car down, the other one's
it's hold your breath stuff, isn't it, through that part of the racetrack when you get yourself up on the grass over the ripple strip. Through here, we saw how Muggleton was so close, like he actually got on the grass on the other side of that ripple strip, and it's so easy to tag the fence and just lose all that track position. So I think he's probably at a point now where he's just got to start thinking about where he can be at the point at that crossover of gain and loss with tyres, but hopefully that doesn't hinder him too much and he can capitalise a little bit.
Yeah, I think you'll be looking at maybe a couple of laps push this on. Luke Mitchelson has come down in the pit lane. It hurt the lap time last time, obviously, with a mistake. 2 turns, 2, 3, and 4. That Luke Mitchelson in the pit lane, that's the second to last car that has to serve their pit stop as we ride off board with Rick Kuznetsov's gearbox, not really gearbox, but rear bumper, as we look back at Robert Gibbs in the ERT Ford Mustang, and he's gonna go right up close to that. We need that camera, please don't ruin that one. He gets right up behind Rick Kuznetsov, and Gibbs is pushing on, trying to see what they can gain. These guys all got fresh rubber. They'll be all trying to push in this opening stint. And isn't that a little bit of a game that you gain, Jake, in terms of your head mental? I have fresh rubber. I want to try and get it now while I have the fresh rubber.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to capitalise while the tyre's good. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tough for these guys because they're amongst traffic. They're all battling. They're all running over each other. Yeah. So it can be... The other thing is to think about the long-term effects of this. Like, if you're burning the tyre up too early in this stint, you've still got to do 20 laps on these tyres. And a track that requires so much drive, so much traction, and I think we've just seen Muggo come down in the pits as well. So, yeah, you've really got to think long-term about these tyres. That's something that Muggo's going to benefit from now because he's got so many less laps to do on these things to the end of the race.
Yeah, and he's got another pit stop to fun in there, so it's really helped out for Mogo now to just do 2 shorter stints than this one compared to his nearest competitors and try and see what he's going to do. He's got a 13-second stop, so roughly the same about everyone else. We'll see where he actually pops out as we see him going down pit lane. Shia Veld is currently second and third forward, and Rod round out the top 5 once the pit stops are done. But I think Mogo's going to slot in just behind McNamara, so sort of where he wanted to be in terms of where he was before, but has got that extra bit of rubber now, Sandman, that he can try and close up the gap.
Yeah, that'll pay dividends for him for these next couple of laps, especially on fresh tyres. He'll give himself a little bit of a chance for those tyres to come up to pressure, but knowing that he's got those extra laps in his pocket, he knows he can start to push on and put a little bit of pressure on the guys that are in front of him, and they'll be aware that he's come out on fresh tyres too. Even though it's only a couple of laps, it does change things a little bit for these drivers.
It does, and it puts them on a different strategy that these guys are now going to try and think of. Okay, we've got Muggo coming up behind us. It's going to be on quicker rubber. We know he's going to be there or thereabouts. He's going to close that gap. He's basically already in the draft for Sean McNamara, so he'll come up onto this battle. He was just behind Andrew Dyson, who is currently in a fight as well. Shire with Hayden Veld, though, right behind him. You spoke about how quick those SSR cars were last year. There is one of them now currently in P number 3. Will he try and get this one done? He's got to try and get the time up, doesn't he, Jake, to catch up to Ratu, who's currently got a 3-second gap.
Well, I think the thing is we know that Ratu took about 4 seconds less fuel last time round. So you got to ask yourself, is it some action at turn 1 as well? I think we're missing right now. Kuznetsov?
They're all in a battle. They are in a big battle. It was Kuznetsov that was off the road. I think, he's managed to regain it. They were all side by side. I saw a bunch of cars. You did catch it pretty quick. It was top of screen where a bunch of cars were having a big battle into turn 1. It was this pack because you can see Muggleton's already caught up to the back of him. So good pick up there, Jake. The guys were fighting hard as Veld's had an accident. He's had a big off. That's a big off. We see it all the time at the top of the hill, turn 6. We've seen some massive accidents. You can see actually where they've extended this.
Failure. It's a hardware failure.
That has to have been. That's a massive accident. That car, that's going to be a safety car.
Safety car, yeah.
Oh, he's angry.
Mate.
He's so angry. He was in such a good position, and it's frustrating. It gets to those positions where you're so frustrated. He was in such a good position. It has to have been a hardware failure. Because, it is. Look at it. Wheels done. Yeah. Big link to the inside wall. It's just a hardware failure and nothing he can do. The amount of accidents we've seen, he's gutted because he knows that was out of his control. There was nothing he could do, Sandman. It's just, it happens. This is our technical failure in our sport.
Yeah,
it just happens.
Oh, it's that 20-cent part we speak about, isn't it? Like that's heartbreaking. When you make a mistake, as much as it pains you, you can take it on board and process it.
Yeah.
But when it's totally out of your hands, you're just like, what the heck? Like it just throws your night into disarray. And now all he's thinking about is, man, I had a really good night going, had a good chance and a good handful of points, and now unfortunately it's all gone south, and we see the safety car heading on track.
Yeah, safety car coming out it's such a big accident at the top of the hill. And you can't do anything. Like you said, Sam, man, it's one of those things when you mentally make a little error, you go, I made that, hand up.
Yeah.
I did that. When it's something you can't control and you're in such a good position, you can tell how frustrated he was. You get so frustrated because you know, why? Why did that have to happen there?
Yeah.
Why was that on me this week? Like, why did it have to fail? What actually happened? Because now you got to deduce what happened. Can I actually fix it? Because if it happens again and again, or if something's actually broken in terms of your hardware, you may be out for a week or two. We know how long sometimes it gets to get some of these actual physical rigs and parts and wheels and everything like that. As we look at Bizacam, this is going to be a big shunt.
Yeah, hold your breath here. He's just a passenger. Bang, straight into the fence. Lucky not to get collected by any other cars there.
Yeah.
But, that's just a night over. That's just heartbreaking. I had a hardware failure a couple of weeks back. I broke a throttle, and it was just like, all right, well, now I'm sort of $1,500 out of pocket now because I've got to order new pedals. I'm going to be out of the sim for probably a week or two, depending on how long it takes for freight. And hopefully he hasn't damaged any hardware. Hopefully it might have just had a bit of a heart attack in the background and died for him. So hopefully it's not going to cost him too much as far as repairing it.
And that's exactly, it happens. It's one of those things, and especially with the quick turnaround of this championship, next week's the next round. So hopefully, fingers crossed for Hayden, it is just the odd software malfunction where it just decides to disconnect and then reconnect a little bit later. And there's just not much you can do about it. Let's see if we can maybe try and grab him. Whether he even wants to be grabbed, he may be a little bit under the weather, but it's one of those things where it just happens and not much you can do. And Jake, has it happened to you? Have you had any times where it's just one of those freak things that just goes wrong?
Yeah, of course. It happens a lot, especially when you're relatively new to sim racing and you've got sort of cheaper gear or second-hand gear and that sort of thing. It can happen. And obviously this track as well is one of the worst tracks that you're going to have in one of the worst spots to have that kind of failure. It's so unfortunate. Really, really hope it doesn't affect this championship too bad, and might be a good opportunity to ask Logitech if they want to maybe help a guy out with some new hardware.
Yeah, depending on what he's got, he may need a little bit of hardware after this. It's one of those things, and now it puts us under safety car. We haven't seen one of these that stand out for a year and a bit. So thanks, Hayden, for that, even though I don't think you really want that. But, it's such an unfortunate incident. But now, safety car, and that changes a lot of things because everyone just came down on the pit road.
Well, that's it. They've ticked the mandatory spot for as far as getting that pit stop done. But what's their tyre life going to be at the end of this race? Are they going to have anything to race with and be competitive with? Because, we talk about how far they go on tyres, but you need something at the end to battle with. So now they've mandatory ticked it off. Do they think about possibly a late pit stop later on for tyres? I don't know. Jake, I guess you'd be the person to talk about as far as how they approach this as far as trying to get their tyre life towards the end of the race.
Well, it's a really weird one, Sandman, because they all pretty much just pitted, and now they've all pitted again. So pretty much everyone at the front is satisfied their CPS requirement. The ones that were a little weird for me was firstly, how in the hell has Brad Ratu managed to keep the lead? I reckon he has underfueled that car something chronic. I reckon he has way less fuel than the cars behind him. You can see with the way he's saving under this safety car here. The other one I'm gutted for is Josh Muggleton. He just came out of the pits on a fresh set of rubber with an overcut, and as he caught cars, then everyone got reset. So he's got good car speed, so he'll still get back into it, but that's pretty gutting for him. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious to see how much fuel Bradley Ratu's got in that car relative to the cars around him.
It's one of those things like you just touched on. Yeah, it's gutting for Muggo because of it. If Ratu doesn't have the fuel, who has fuel? Because his pit stop time is roughly 15 seconds. That last stop, it was longer. sort of matches up with everyone else around them, but you can see he is trying to make sure that he has everything as he gets ready for this restart. Obviously, the safety car has sped off. Ratu control that pit stop time that we just saw. So obviously 15 seconds for Ratu, and obviously those behind 13, 12 seconds, 10 seconds for Dyson. Sort of bunched this field up. Safety cars breed, safety car Sandman, and now it's all up to Ratu for this jump.
Yeah, now he's just thinking about, it's all about that throttle position and not lighting the tyres up on exit and getting someone to, you know, obviously get the jump on him, but more, you don't really want to make a mistake and possibly hit the wall. So it's all this restart procedure. They'll be playing it out in their heads, but at the moment now, like I said, it's the fuel numbers now. Who has what to get home?
Yeah, who has what? As Ratu bunched him up on the exit, they all thought that he was going to go. He has control, and he waited till they all decided to try and jump him, but he jumped the rest of them. Look at that down the inside.
Oh.
Dyson and Gibbs going towards the
God.
fence. They are pushing each other up against the wall. Gibbs was trying to get the nose down the inside of... Dyson down into turn one. Big curve from Gibbs. They've managed to hold on. That was holding
Mate, and nothing worse than when you're battling someone side by side. If they catch a bit of that curb and they're in the air, they're out of control basically. So
Gibbs
you are.
descent.
Oh my goodness, they're still going. So down the back straight, it's heart and mouth stuff when you see the car up on two wheels because you know that it's probably going to concertina into an accident.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. I thought he was going straight in the fence. I thought they were both going off. That was a massive dive down the inside, but I think that actually helped because Dyson ran wide on the exit into turn number 4, and it actually allowed the door to be open for Gibbs, who put the nose down the inside. It was a chaotic jump, but they've all managed to hold on. I don't know how the rest of the field went because it was chaotic out the front, but now it's all Ratu out in front.
They've opened up a little bit of a margin too, haven't they? The first couple of cars have now capped them. So, yeah, it's always holding your breath, isn't it, for these first couple of laps? You know, it's after a restart. Everyone's had their time to calm down. I do love this. Little bit of movement around down the straight, trying to break that draft. But the pressure's on, and this top 3 have got themselves a nice little gap.
They've got themselves a good gap, and one thing that I want to touch on, we talked about it earlier on. Rehan had that mistake. He made that little error. He got tagged in the back, spun around. He was down to 26. He's now up into 17. This safety car would have worked perfect for him to bunch the field up and get himself back into a position to maybe make up some ground. So we'll keep progress on what he does. But out in front, Ratu, O'Shea, and Rudd. Rudd was obviously last round winner. Let's see if he can try and make a move by Dylan O'Shea to get this job done. There's no fuel saving now, Jake. It's all go from here as we actually... Oh, that could be a safety car. Poor Young has pulled over to the right-hand side. We say safety cars breed safety cars, and this one looks like it's had a big moment. It's lost the boot. It's lost the rear wing. That one could be done as well.
Yeah, it's a monument. Like there's plenty of damage to it, isn't it? As we check out the replay, although he's already had drama as he detonated a motor, possibly.
Must be the case. Maybe, yeah, it looks like it's detonated because he's just pulled that one over and called that one done. And it's hard in one of those positions, Jake. Sometimes you can't make it all the way back to pit lane.
Yeah, I don't know why the safety car isn't out yet, to be honest. This car is parked in a pretty dodgy spot in one of the higher risk parts of the racetrack. I don't know what's going on there.
I think they're just waiting for the leader, maybe.
Yeah, possibly, but nonetheless, if there is a safety car, that solves all of Brad Ratu's problems, if he did have any problems. So that's the one that's really interesting for me. I bet he's praying for it.
He saw it. It was like, I want that now, please, thank you. It will help me out a lot. Maybe they've all just tried to get around. I believe this should be a safety car. It should have been called right now, I believe, as the field. There it is. So safety car is out as the field will come back down to where the car is. And one person that looked like they were having a big dive there was actually Muggleton and had to slam on the anchors to not make an overtake. Obviously, once the safety car is out, field is frozen and they stay where they are as we jump onto the roof cam and watch the field fly by.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? You know, when your night's over and you're parked on the side, the safety car comes out and there's pretty much nothing you can do. It's watching your night go from bad to worse, isn't it, unfortunately? So, safety car out. Looks like everyone's obviously going to stay out. I wondered if there was a couple of people that would try and risk maybe making a pit stop, but everyone pretty much up the front, they're going to stay intact and see how this all plays out. But lap 35 to 65, it's not over yet, boys. There's still a lot to play out.
There's still a lot to play out, and I think we're making up for our safety cars from the Enduro last season. We've now got 2, so we will tick 2 of them off. We've got 2 back, so we can say we've done, what, 100 nearly 200 laps around the joint, and we've had 2 safety cars. So we get a safety car every 100 odd laps. We'll go from there. That's our play from here. But while we get underway in our second safety car, we're going to go.
So back at Sandown International Raceway, round 3 of the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational. This is a qualifying series, and although safety cars were a bit of a thing that went missing in the endurance races, we've now seen our second one in the sprint race. And Jake, how is it as a driver now? You've already gone through the process of you've ticked off the compulsory pit stops, and now they've found themselves with another safety car. I guess a few of these guys have taken that chance to maybe save what fuel they can to definitely know that they can make it to the end of the race.
Yeah, that's it, Sam. And I think a lot of them will be saving, but I'd like to think that this second one has got most people out of trouble. I think if there was anyone who was in trouble, like the likes of Brad Ratu, I think this will probably have solved all their dramas. So we mentioned at the start how 65 laps isn't much of a sprint race. Well, I can tell you 30 laps with no pit stops left to go is definitely a sprint race. So I think that'll be the mentality for these guys from now on. Hit in the last safety car. It means they're all pretty much the same on fuel. They're all pretty much the same on tyres. It's just race.
Are you concerned as a driver, Jake, to go this long as far as tyres? I mean, they've already gone through a little bit of a process. There wasn't too many laps of under green with these new tyres, but to make them go the distance now, I guess everyone would prefer a fresher set later on. But would you be mindful as a driver to think about the rest of the race distance and what you've got underneath you?
Definitely, 100%. There's no doubt about it. You need to think about that. It is still a long way to go, longer than any of these guys have gone on a tyre stint thus far. But I guess the one consoling factor is that, everyone's in the same boat. You got no worse or better tyres than anybody else. So it's just a matter of knowing where you're at. If you're struggling with tyre wear or have in the previous stints, you might be a little bit concerned about it, but also the confidence must be booming. If you've been one of those people in this race who have sort of made your tyres last really well and now you're all in the same boat with a long distance to go, you'd be stoked.
Now it's one of those things of what does Ratu do for this restart? He's done it once. He held him off at the start line, at the start of the last restart after turn 13, or turn 12, I should say, 12, 13. He held it off pretty late. What does he do now, Sam, man? He can't really play the same strategy again and sort of back him all the way up. He may even try to go earlier.
Well, that's the beauty, isn't it, about being the race leader? We've seen it even in the real-world safety cars about how tricky Shane Van Gisbergen can be. We even saw it in our own series at Spa about how he jumped the field. Like, it wasn't a jump, he did it all legally. So, looks like he may already be gone. Yeah, he's gone. So, everyone was expecting him to be going slow through this part. He's actually booked it already.
He's gone, and the car that was a lap down in amongst that little train, I think, ran wide there at the last corner. I don't know where that car ended up because it would have been in amongst the battle. But wait, green flag once again here for round 3 of the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational Series here from Sandown. It is Ratu, O'Shea, Rudd, Dyson and Gibbs rounding out the top 5 as we watch the field stream down into turn 1.
Yeah, it's like everyone just trying to take it easy, but how's that margin? You're pretty happy when you start to gap the field when you've got a restart like that. When you find out that the guys behind you're falling asleep a little bit, that's a little feather in your cap, and that just takes the pressure off for the next couple of laps.
It's good as well for him to, now he's got, like you said, no pressure, but if he needs to play another safety car restart, they really don't know what he's going to do. So it puts another little, I can use that in my back pocket, I can go later, I can go earlier. It really mixes it up to point of what do I do, and they're not going to know because they did not expect him to go early. They were expecting him to leave it to late. Ratu played it perfectly, went early, saw that, and has now managed to jump. And he's sort of bringing Oshire and Rod with him. They'll slowly creep in with the draft because obviously Ratu has now out in front. So he knows they're going to come back at him. But like you said, Sam, and it gives him a little bit less pressure for these opening laps.
Yeah, no, everyone's different. I always found it as a driver, that first lap or so is always a little bit nerve-wracking because, you know, everyone's had a little bit of a time to reset. Here we go. Looks like it will possibly a move. He thought about it. The bit that I liked about that shot is that he's moving around in the mirror. I speak about it. Don't make it too obvious that you are going to stay in and not make an attempt. It's always good to dart around and have that driver in front of you just thinking in the back of their mind, is he going to make a move here or not?
But that's how they make a mistake. You look in the mirror, you take your eyes off. We were talking about it before when we were looking at the cameras where everyone's looking in the mirror, looking left, looking right. They're not actually looking at where they're going most of the time because they're looking at data. They're looking in their mirror. They're looking over at the left screen. They're trying to figure out what they're doing rather than actually focusing. So that little mirror of a car moves to the left, you're looking there. That could miss your braking marker like at half a meter. I'm sure you, Jake, you know that. You're always looking at other things. As soon as you see something come up, that you lose that distraction or concentration of what you're actually doing. Sometimes it can pay big dividends.
Yeah, that's it. It's definitely a mental game here, and if you can take someone's focus away from hitting that apex or something like that, or even in a traction zone, we mentioned a lot of this track how important it is. You just get in their mirror, even get in their bumper. I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but I'm all for it. This is a contact sport. Get in the bumper, get them loose, get them all, you know, stressed and concerned, and that's going to hurt their run on the straight, and that's your opportunity to make a move, especially when you're at this point in the stint where everyone's on good tyres, which means, you know, everyone's getting good drive, everyone's getting good traction. It's quite hard to pass at this stage of the stint because everyone's doing pretty good. You got no advantage on anybody, so free them up, get them loose, you know, hurt them up, and try and get the move done.
I think that's what Rudd may be looking at. He's now needing to have a look at Dylan Oshire in front of him to see if he can try and close down the gap to his teammate out in front. He's going to have a really good run down the hill. Will he throw it to the inside? We see a couple of moves down here into turn number 9. Obviously, in real world, it's a big dive to the inside. Stay in behind, and we're going to go follow the leader once again. But they're slowly bringing in Ratu, aren't they, Sam? That little bit of a draft helps slowly bring it back.
Absolutely. I love those onboard cameras too because it does give you some sort of indication of how the guys around you are faring, where their stronger and weaknesses are in this racetrack. You know, you'll see that some people, man, Stenny last week was incredible under brakes. So, you know, if you've got someone behind you that's really good under brakes, that starts to take that mental fatigue and it's like, oh my God, you know, every time you get into that hard braking zone, his old mate behind me going to take that dive. Oh, look at the curb action too there. That was cool.
Love the curbs. Love the action here at Sandown. This racetrack has always been one of those bucket list items in terms of how good racing is. It's good to have it on our service, and now Gibbs has got Dyson in front of him. Will he try and set up a move down the hill? He's looking and looking again if he can try, and he's just sitting right in the draft, trying to fill up that rear vision mirror all the way down and down the hill. This is such a tricky part, like Jake's touched on earlier. You've got to commit yourself so early to the braking zone, to turning into the corner. It's not a you can brake and then you just got to turn in it. You're already basically committed to the corner in the apex, halfway up the hill.
I think it's funny when some people out of our sport, they'll see that, you know, a driver makes a little mistake and runs into the back of someone. It's like, and their knowledge of their motorsport might go, why didn't he just brake that little bit more? They don't realise that they're on the edge of their braking limit. Like, you are fully committed and you can't decide to push that brake any harder because it just ain't going to work for you.
A lot of the times you can't. I'm sure Jake can testify to this. All the time you're on the limit in this car. There is never a moment, aren't you, Jake, where you are not on the limit. To get the lap time and the tyre life and everything, obviously you can drive at 90% if you want to get the tyre life out of it, but you're still on the limit of the brakes, on the limit of the throttle, because as soon as you make a mistake, as we see, Dyke going side by side, they're going to go side by side. That's contact! Dyke in the fence, big one! That's Loxton around as well. That's a big hit to the inside. And this could be another safety car if Dyke can't get that car rolling. I think Loxton's as well got his going, but that's a big accident through turns 2 and 3.
Nah, it's dead. Yellow flashing light.
Yeah, that's dead. That's dead. That is day done. As Loxton flick spins her out. Nice little flick spin camera. It's all over and done. It's just side by side. I believe it was Dengate on the inside. They made contact and Dyke around. But one thing I was touching on, Jake, as we look at a replay of this, is Dyke, there is just got the curb.
Hard contact.
They're very hard contact. Side by side through there doesn't work much, does it, Jake?
No, definitely not. And that car's in a precarious spot at the moment.
Yeah.
If anyone watched the Super 3 race at Sandown this time last year will know exactly what can happen when you've got a car parked there. But leaders are coming through there now, and it appears that car's gone. So I don't know if it's escaped or whether it's driven it away or what's going on, but that car is no longer there.
Lost in just, so much going on in front of him and around. He went, we'll have to see where actually he has gone and whether he's gotten Loxton's gotten going. And so we believe he's gotten going, he has. So Dyke has got it going. Maybe you needed to refire the engine. Maybe it didn't die completely. You just, obviously it turned off and then he had to get the car back going. So he's done that. And managed to rejoin. But one thing I was trying to get to, my point, you're on the limit, Jake, all the time in these race cars, and you can't do anything about it. Even when you have that sort of a moment and you're trying to fight someone, you can't just brake it harder because it will make a mistake.
Yeah, and that's one of the big differences you see with the true, legends of I guess Australian sim racing, like the likes of Jared Phillip, Madison Down. These guys can dance these cars at 100% brake pressure. It's just it's amazing how they can make that happen, and the amount of skill that it actually takes to sort of float the car around the racetrack, position the car in the right place, play the chess game whilst also driving these things fast is really, really hard.
Yeah, it's never an easy time, and a lot of people just jump in this car or see this car and see obviously all the guys that drive it. Oh, it looks easy, we'll just jump in and have a play. No, it's not. It really isn't. These guys that drive these cars at 10 tenths are the best at what they do. We've seen obviously plenty of other people today, Warren, obviously go on and do really well in other things as well, like Jared does well in everything he jumps into. Obviously, there's so many other drivers, Mads as well, and I could keep going on. I could be all day. There's so many other Aussie guys that have jumped into these cars that have gone on and done so well. Rogers obviously is a name that I can't not forget to mention. That can just jump in this car, do so well, and then jump in everything else and be good, because this car trains you, Sam, man, to do things that are just unworldly.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting getting a driver's feedback the first time that they drive these supercars. So they drive it and they go, these things are terrible driving it, plenty of ABS and downforce and everything else. And there's a lot of people that just scratch their heads and go, how do the guys like Madison Down and Jared Phillip and all the names you're rattling off, how do they do it? How are they so quick when a car that technically handles like garbage?
Yeah, it's very true. I'm sure Jake can testify that the car is not fun. I'm sure Jake would rather drive a GT3 or something else over this, but it's always. But then again, some of us are crazy, and Jake could be one of them. Are you crazy that you like this car over everything else?
I think the beauty of this car, and it's fortunate that we have series like the Logitech G Pro Invitational to show it off, but it's just the racing. The racing it produces when you've got a car that has no traction control, 650 horsepower, no ABS. Seeing these guys balance it and dance it on the limit is just so impressive to watch. More impressive than any GT3 race, in my opinion. So yeah, really, really excited to see, not just the next couple of weeks of the qualifying series, but also the kind of racing that we see in the actual Pro Series when it gets starting in a few weeks.
Yeah, I can't believe that, we're getting into another season, Sam, of Pro Series action that's going to be crazy from the word go. As we get back into this one, it's basically been pretty stagnant since this free start. Ratu has got roughly a 7/10 of a second lead at the moment. Michaelson's holding down P7, but he's got a car, 9.5 Sim Sports cars behind him, Sam, that could be want to have a little dig in these later stages of the race with just over 20 laps to go.
Yeah, a little bit of a gap opening and up in front of him for Muggleton, but good to see that the way his race has sort of turned around. We said that he got caught out a little bit with the unfortunate part of that safety car and missed out on a chance to get that pit stop, but bringing himself back in 7th place, I think he'll be happy with that, the way it's all played out so far.
He's done a good job to keep his nose clean after obviously coming together with Dyson. As I say that, he ran a little bit wide. Was he able to keep that car on the racetrack? I think he was. No, he wasn't. He's lost the spot. He's lost that position, but he's kept going. He just lost the one spot, but out in front. This is the battle for P2. A shy run, as I say that, it's still going on. So he's lost a couple more. There goes McNamara. Johnston to the inside. I praise him a little bit. He goes to make a mistake. That one's on me. I'll call that one. I'll take that one, Sam, man. It's all right. You got Stenny. I'll take Muggo this time. It's down to the inside. McNamara on Brian Borg gets the job done in a turnable up. Moves himself now up into P number 7 as this little battle is starting to liven up a little bit more as well.
Man, that's heart and mouth stuff. If I jinx another GTR driver, I'm going to find myself outed from that team. I've been with them for 10 plus years, but I think I'll find myself on the outer if I jinx any more of them. But I'm sure Muggleton hopefully can bounce back. They're still pretty close together, but I don't know if he's entirely happy with his race car, because you can see just how much time that they've dropped off from the bunch in front.
Yeah, it was sort of okay. He started to gap him a little bit and then made that little error, and it sort of put him in his pack. So let's see. I don't think he's too happy. Like you said, that little mistake would have come from the car just not being 100% to his liking, but they managed to regain. This is a big draft train that has formed, but that battle for P number 2 was sort of starting to liven up. There's a couple of cars in amongst it behind O'Shea that is really starting to get it, and there it is. So we've got O'Shea, Rudd, Dyson, Gibbs, and Kuznetsov all in amongst this paddle, Jake. Would you, in terms of Rudd's position, you see Ratu, he's there, he's within touching distance, but do you feel like Rudd's got the better speed over O'Shea at the moment?
I don't think there's a lot in it, to be honest. I think these guys are all pretty close. I don't know if they're sort of underdriving or anything. I think they're all on the limit, pushing as hard as they can, but I think they're all just, quite close on pace, as silly as that sounds like. With the exception of Dyson, these guys all qualified in the top 10. So, it's all pretty tight. I think also we do have to think about the fact that this is a championship, and it,
Oh, as we say that.
Oh my! How lucky was that?
Oh, Dyson off the road. Gibbs was in the back of him. Thanks, Jake. Jake saying that, we've got to think of the championship and all the drama unfolds. Dyson off the road. He's managed to rejoin amongst it as we bring up a replay. I don't know whether was that Gibbs maybe locking a brake in behind. It was definitely looked like from his front bumper. Here it is, down, just so deep under brakes, bang, straight into the back of Dyson. Nothing Dyson could do. It was a watching brief in terms of that massive hit to the rear. He managed to come out of that gravel trap and keep it unscathed from going further down the road. It's hard to get that one back, but did a good job, brought it back on the track. But that kicked off the top 5, didn't it?
Yeah. And what were you just touching on about when you're on your brake limit? He absolutely drilled the back of him, but he was probably on the anchors as best he could. But unfortunately, that little bit of contact and that fired him off the racetrack.
Could that have been a thing as we go? Here we go again. We'll look to the inside. No, he's just going to roll out of it a little bit early. And Gibbs and Kuznetsov, I think, switched positions as well. So they moved Gibbs up into P number 4. As I say that, they've switched again. And Gibbs is off the road down the hill. He's well wide of the mark. That's going to be a slow down penalty. Kuznetsov actually lit the rear tyres up. What happened? He's side by side again. Oh, Gibbs is just way too deep. Never going to pull that car up. They try to go side by side. He cut across the grass, managed to keep it on all fours, and now they keep going again. It's all kicking off within 15 to go.
Mate, how happy are the top 3 now? They look in their rearview mirror and they look back and they see a 4-second margin. It's like, well, how good's this? We can just sort of settle and run our own race and then not worry about them, because, man, hasn't that changed over the last few laps? And what they just need to be mindful is, like we were saying before, is that just be mindful of the points and not probably attack just yet. There's still, 15 to 16 laps in this race to go.
There is a long way it's touching on. You could have been happy just to sit there, couldn't you, Jake, and just float around inside the top 5, get your points and call it a day, have a good points day heading into Bathurst. But now some of those guys are not even anywhere near the top 10. It puts a bit of a downer on it, because now you've got to try and gain it back with 16 laps to go.
Oh, Gibbs has just thrown it off again. He's having an absolute nightmare. He's just gone massively wide at 6 over the top of the crest. If you're Robert Gibbs right now, you've really got to get your emotion in check, because he's almost certainly going to cop a time penalty for that incident with Dyson. And, a 5-second penalty with how condensed the field is from these safety cars. There's a chance he could lose a boatload of positions. So he's just got to be...
Oh, Mungo! Is that Mungo? Oh, he's going to gather it up. Oh, he's not in the fence. Oh, he gathered it up, but he actually got a touch from behind. So, man, he was a busy boy at the steering wheel, but unfortunately it's now darted him way back down the field.
What has happened here in the later stages of this race? It is all kicked off. How is he off there? Going for a move down the inside, or maybe he got a tap, and he's got another one. It's put himself straight into the fence, and that's going to be a long way down to just dropping positions. Like you said as well, Jake, Gibbs was having issues. Now, Muggleton was having it and then Johnston just around he went.
It actually started coming into the corner. I was looking at he actually tried to go side by side with Damien Johnson, which funnily enough was the guy who finished the job. But that was a really weird one on the way into there. They sort of Muggleton, it was almost like he tried for a dive bomb on the outside. That was really, really odd.
Yeah, trying to line himself up maybe to keep the inside into here as we look 11 and 12, trying to keep it on the inside, but it just, it all unraveled for him and everyone else in the fence. And like you said, Gibbs was having issues where he's still inside that top 5, but he's going to have a penalty or maybe, we don't know, obviously it will come up to the stewards, but there was definite notice how it cost a bunch of spots, so I definitely feel like the stewards will definitely be investigating that. The one with Muggleton, I don't know what they're going to do there. That's just another mess that they're going to have to figure out. I'm glad to be the commentary booth and not out in the racetrack or not in the stewards box. So with now under 15 laps to go, we got Ratu, Shire and Rudd were basically clear of all the mess behind them, because Netsov, Gibbs, and then McNamara, Borg, Ladder, Higgins, Dyson. Well, Dyson's back inside the top 10, mind you, after everything unfolded in front of him. It was a bit of a mess, but they've all kept going.
I'm surprised. I didn't expect it to be. I expected things to pick up a little bit, but I didn't expect it to be now. I probably expected it around sort of like 55 to 60. But man, there's a couple of people that have really shot themselves in the foot there, unfortunately. So, and we're running out of laps too. And you find yourself way too far back, it's hard to make up those positions. And the man on screen is exactly what is a good example, because at the start of this race, he was backwards into the guardrail, and now he finds himself in P12. That's an awesome comeback.
Yeah, good try from Rian to actually be able to keep his composure. He did really well, was able to get the job done, and now look where he is. He is in that position now, P12. He's ready to gain all those positions. He does have some little left front damage to the front bar of the whole Commodore, but he's been able to bring it back, claw his way back to just outside the top 10, kept his nose clean, mind you, to put himself now just outside that top 10. And Jake, another thing that we got to think about, and I know it could be silly to think about, as another thing happened with Hins. I think he just dropped down a position, maybe not. Is it one of those things where that Bathurst is next, that he's trying to make up more time here now to get those points back, because it may be harder next week?
Possibly, but I feel like you can't afford to drive like that.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, Josh Muggleton, I feel so bad for him, because he's someone who does really deserve to be in this series, and it has just gone from probably his best night that he's had so far this season to his worst, just in, half a second. But something I really got to compliment Rayhan on, actually. I know that Rayhan's had a lot of coaching from Madison Down, and Madison Down's one of those guys who always manages to find his way into a championship fight. And the reason that he can do that is because he's so consistent. When things happen, he manages to bring it back and actually claw together a result, which is exactly what you're seeing from your student here in Rayhan.
He has done a mega job and definitely been able to keep his composure. Very, very Mads-esque, isn't it, Sam, man, that he's just been able to claw his way back. He had the incident early on, but he's just on the outside of that top 10. He's doing a really good job, and he's on this train. It may be a train that could kick off later, but he's done a good job to bring himself back into it.
Absolutely, and watching his webcam, we're actually blessed to have these pictures. So a big shout out to these guys that have given us their vision for the night. And just watching him, we saw when he had his moment, he didn't lose his cool. He kept his composure. He got the car pointed in the right direction and just pushed on with it. And now he finds himself in a little bit of a train where if these guys make a mistake, he's going to get a couple of free spots without doing anything. So he's in a really good spot, and big hats off to him and keeping his composure and to be in the position where he is in these dying stages of this race.
He's got a track map on the floor. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but he's got a sand down track map on the floor. That's awesome. So good.
He got his he's had his telemetry up on the right hand side, and he's changed it obviously the track map maybe during one of the safety cars, maybe to see where everyone is on the race. As you can see there on the right, he had that monitor before with all the live timing. I think it's JRT or something on it that he's got at the moment. And he had it up, and then he switched it now to the track map, maybe to get in a position of where everyone is on the racetrack. He's done a mega job, and so far fighting himself on the outside of the top 12, right behind Freeman right now, trying to push in to get closer to that top 10. A little bit of bump. And that's what you're going to get in touring car racing. He's got bricks behind him, but this train, I feel like this is where it's all going to come from. This train fighting for inside that top 10.
Absolutely. They'll be well aware of how many laps we've got to go. They'll see themselves in a position, and it's easy to get sidetracked too, because you know when the cars are so bunched up, as a driver, it's easy to get sort of the rose goggles over your eyes and just think, well, I'm just going to go for position because there's a couple of easy spots just in front of me, but it's not as easy as said and done as far as just trying to make up 1 or 2 positions.
I feel like this battle could liven up towards the end as well. We're just coming down 11 laps to go. Ratu, Ashaya, Rudd separated by less than 0.6 of a second. There is not much in these three out in front. Ratu has, I think, done a really good job since the pit stop cycle. We were talking about whether he'd even have enough fuel. He managed to do it. Obviously, the second safety car would have helped him with that, but he's done a really good job to hold on. He had the pace. He was inside that top 10 for most of that first stint, but he's done a really good job to hold Shire and Rudd behind.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to have some good race strategy play out too. So, yeah, and like you said, he's deserving to be there because he's actually got pace. And of course, you can see how much Shea starts to close up. Obviously, that's got a lot to do with the draft that these guys get down the back straight. But he's got good pace. He's doing everything right, but he's certainly got his hands full now. The pressure is starting to build now with these guys as we start to rattle off these laps.
I think as well, would this be the start of the race, Jake, where you start to see that tyre wear and who has better tyre wear, who's maybe set the car up for a little bit of a longer run, even though I think they were all expecting shorter runs, but to where the point now is, okay, this is where the tyre life starts to show?
Yeah, for sure. Like we're coming up this lap on 20 laps, I think, since the last safety car. So you're starting to feel it. There's no doubt about it. Track temp has cooled off. It's come down to 40 degrees, but it's still 40 degrees. And as I say, on a track that's so drive dependent, it's also one of those tracks where the wear can sort of compound. Like you might light it up once coming off a corner, make a little bit of mistake on those motocross berms that you're talking about in the exit of the corner, but then you've got less grip the next lap and then less the lap after, and it just gets worse and worse and starts to spiral. So hopefully these guys like that we're seeing behind Brad Ratu here, hopefully they've conserved the tyres so we can have a bit of a race on our hands.
One thing I want to touch on as well, because Netsov is coming half a second gain last time around. He's only 1.7. He's just coming up to that window of getting the draft behind Dylan Rudd. He's basically there. Oh, Shia makes a mistake. That's going to pull him back, as well as Dylan Rudd to Kuznetsov. He's starting to close up 0.3 he gained to Rudd. It was half a second to the leader of Bradley Ratu. Kuznetsov could be a player in this as well in the dying stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing that he's got going for him, he's got no pressure from behind. So for him, it's totally eyes forward. And you can see the guys that are in front of him just starting to battle it out a little bit. Every time they do that, they're not hitting their apex perfect. He is, and he's slowly pulling in that margin.
Another 0.4 the last time around. Here comes Rit Kuznetsov to try and get in amongst this battle, and then it's going to be 395 Sim Sports cars up against one DPR. Yeah, just in the middle of it. The Super X DPR car is going to be in the middle of a bit of a sandwich here, as he has been for most of this stage. There's Gibbs is off the road. His day has gone from bad to worse, and can he get it out the fence? He has. He's stuck on the grass. It's spinning up those rear tyres, but he's managed to rejoin. He's got to do this safely. It's pretty hard to rejoin at that type of the racetrack, but he's done a good job, and the field has done a good job as well to avoid getting into Robert Gibbs. But Gibbs' day from a top 10, top 5 at the early stage before it's all unraveled in this final stint.
It's actually worse than that, Jake, because about 30 seconds before that happened, the gavel has fallen and you got 15 seconds for having Dyson off down at Dandenong Road the lap before. So, yeah, absolute nightmare for Gibbs.
It's gone from bad to worse for Robert Gibbs, and that could have even played on his mind into the corner and just maybe unsettled him a little bit to make a mistake if he got told. But here's the lead. Oh, Shia was having a look down the inside. Runs now. Can I have a little bit of a better run? Exit out of turn 1. You can send it down the inside into turn 2, but you've got to be pretty brave and committed on the inside. But now, who's back in the battle? Kuznetsov. It's a 4-car train out in front.
He's loving what he's seeing out front, isn't he? Because I think he closed at another 0.6 on that lap. So now it's just eyes forward and say, hey, if I was him, I'd go, hey, boys, up front, battle it out. Battle your heart out. Because if you guys make a mistake, it's going to be easy pickings for him.
The thing now is, what's he going to do in terms of that position? He's the 4th car in the train. We've talked about how hard it is to pass around here. Ratu is in the best position. Track position is key, but he's locked the rears under brakes. He set the car sideways just a little bit. He did a good job to regain control, but that's opened the door. As soon as you see a mistake from the guy in front, you want to show the nose. You want to put them under pressure. You want to make sure that they know you're there, and that's exactly what Dylan O'Shea did. And Jake, that's one thing that it lightens you up, doesn't it? It gives you that little bit of spark of motivation to go, okay, he's making mistakes, I can get this done.
I think the best example of that is Kuznetsov. He's here now.
Yeah.
We were just talking about how he was gaining half a
Here we
second.
go. Oh, he's going to make a move up the
Oh, the
inside,
rear.
side by side. Oh, just clearing the bumper. Oh, the pressure's on now between these two. Yeah, so exactly what you said. He's sitting there watching everything unfold. He's going to be right in the thick of it now.
And now he's in that battle. Does Rudd let him through because he knows he has the pace? There are teammates. Rudd may just want to sit back. He's already won a race. He's got points that he needs because Kuznetsov's solidly inside the top 10 as well. But this race is on out in front. They're blocking already. Ratu down the inside. He's going to cover that line of Shea all underneath the rear wing, giving him basically the bump draft all the way down the back straightaway. The top 4 in a fight. This could actually bring McNamara into it. He is 5 seconds off, but the fighting is fierce out in front.
Guys, I'm worried about this pack. I think I'm just waiting. I think it's like a storm that's brewing. You just don't know what's going to happen. But you can now see that they're just using up whatever tyres they've got. But they've got to be careful because, Jake, it's easy, isn't it? When you start getting these tyres and they start spinning on exit, if you overheat them, it's hard to get that traction back, isn't it?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it's sort of a compounding penalty that you pay from lighting the rear up because then it becomes harder to put the traction down the next time round and then it just gets worse and worse. But the other thing is, I think I could be wrong, but all 4 of these guys are having a relatively good run this season. So you need to ask yourself, if you're someone like Rick Kuznetsov, do you need to take the risk? Is it worth trying to go for 3rd with the risk of having exactly what we just saw happen to Robert Gibbs, another guy who has had an exceptional season up until right now and has one thing go wrong that just completely ruins his night?
The other thing as well you got to think of, and I'm going to go the other side of this coin, is I've already had a really good first 2 races of the season. If I have a battle, I got 5 seconds behind me to the next car. I may lose 5 seconds, but I may not lose the position. So how much am I going to lose in having a dig? It's sort of one of those positions now where these guys are so solidly inside that top 5. You're right, Jake. They could just go, I'm solid. I just need to make sure that they get through this week, and then I'll just go all out at Bathurst because I've already had 3 good races. But these guys might think, well, I'm not going to lose much, so let's have a dig now. I think that's playing on their heads a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. And you do need to, take some risk for sure. Because as Sandman alluded to earlier, if you have a nightmare at Bathurst, it is good to have that extra point. Those points do make a difference. But again, at a track like Sandown, this late into the race on old tyres where everyone's running low wing and that sort of thing, the risk of a crash is very high. So it's just, do you want to take that risk for potentially not a lot of reward?
And these guys are going at it already. Look at the movement that O'Shea is doing behind Ratu. It's all on Sandman out in front. He's got a good draft down this back straight. Will he look to the outside? Will he get alongside Ratu to have a dive? It's a hard spot to try and go around the outside. He thinks better of it and sits in behind.
I was going to say he's a braver man than I to go around the outside there. I wouldn't be doing it, especially the position he's in. You don't want to throw away P2, but he has to think about whether he's going to have a crack because obviously he's got that pressure behind him, and all he can see is that Ratu is moving around a little bit on the racetrack, but he can see that Rudd is in his mirror. And have we got a little bit of traffic in front of these boys? Is that what I saw?
It looks like a lap car could be coming to play a little bit of advocate. Actually moves over at Zachary Hanlon, but he's going to try and get the draft. Any little advantage that Ratu can get, he's going to try and pull it in, but he can't do it. It's under 4 laps to go. Now with Ratu out in front, Ashire in second, Rudd and Kuznetsov, the top 4, separated by a second.
Jake, you said earlier you want to be P2. Do you want to be P1 at this stage now?
Oh, I think so. Definitely at this stage in the race, when you know you've got the fuel, you want to be in the lead. There's only 3 laps to go, which means there's probably only 6 easy passing spots left on this lap, which means you park that thing on the white line and you win this race. So, yeah, definitely want to be in the lead at this point. There's no doubt about it.
I think that's what Ratu's happy about right now, that he's actually been able to get that track position after through the first 2 safety cars. He played the master stroke, really. It was all came down once they get close. It's always a hold your breath and go, how are they going to make contact into turn 9? But it's one of those things where you go, he played the master stroke. He did the short fill early. He got just put 10 pit stop time was short. And then the safety cars played him into this race, and he's done a good job to hold on to the lead right now. Coming up to lap 63 of 65. 3 laps to go for the guys out in front. This is Rehan looking to try and get back inside the top 10. Look at these guys moving around. That was actually Rudd. Looked like he was going to maybe make a move on Ashire into P number 2, but he's going to give him a little bit of a bump on the exit and sit him behind.
Oh, it's heart and mouth stuff here, especially when you know what's on the line. It's like, yeah, you're having a crack for a possible win, but man, if you throw it away and you end up backwards with a couple of laps to go, you're going to be absolutely devastated.
you're going to be nowhere at the moment if you actually do make a mistake, because the field is still sort of condensed. It's not as far out as you'd like. You may drop to around 15th, maybe 20th, in that sort of a bubble where you could drop out if everything goes wrong. But Ratu's done a good job. That little move from Rudd actually pulled Ashire off for this time around, where Ratu could sort of concentrate on the line down into turn number 9, Dandelion Road once again. He's done a good job, and he's been able to hold off for one more time, but he got a little bit of exit. He got a little bit unhappy on the throttle. Now he's going to fight it off down into turn 11 and 12. Ashire looks like he could be trying to set himself up for a run into turn 1.
Yeah, good little mid-corner exit speed too there. He just didn't quite get it off the exit. He obviously had to be careful about not running into Ratu. To see, I love how they move around here. Look at them. But the more they move around too, that's bringing Rudd and Kuznetsov in it to it, because they're just going in a straight line.
They're just going in a straight line while they're still wiggling all the way down the front straight away. Here he is. He's going to have the overlap. It's going to be on the outside, but down the inside goes Rudd. Rudd opens the door. He's going to get the job done. Ashire backs out of it. He knows that he can't go too wide through there. He's actually going to send it down the inside. Are they going to make contact? No, they don't. But that's going to hold up Kuznetsov. And Ratu's like, okay, boys, you keep fighting. I'm going to skip away.
Ratu's loving what he looks in his rearview mirror and says, you little beauty, boys, just keep fighting. I'll open up this gap a little bit and we'll end this race very shortly. That's
what he's done. Kuznetsov going to look to the outside. He's going to hold it around the outside. Oh, he couldn't get it turned in where he would have liked. Ashire's been able to hold on, and he's done the job to get into P number 3 to hold that position. Oh, he lit it up on the exit. That's going to kill all momentum. He's going to fry the tyres as they come up to start the last lap. Ratu in front, right in second. I think Kuznetsov was looking to have a dive on Ashire. It's all come down to this, Jake, and set themselves up. But one little mistake, one little dive, and it set the world alight for Ashire.
That's it. 30 lap old plus tyres now as well, Jake. That's a huge thing to consider, and I think we saw that there from Dylan O'Shea. He's starting to lose the rear. You can see he's making mistakes on account of the tyre. He's just got to get this thing home at this point.
He just needs to hold on to P number 3. He's done a really good drive so far, holding down second, tried to go for a move. It didn't work. Rudd filled the door, and that was all he needed to do. And now he's just going to try to look at Kuznetsov sliding the rear tyres. You can tell they're all on old rubber. They're all blowing the tyres off of this one. Sam Manners, Ratu in front for the final time. He's got a good gap over Rudd.
It's been an incredible race here at Sandown. We didn't know what to expect. Obviously, we think about the last time we were here, 161 laps. We didn't see a safety car. This race has seen everything. We've seen some good racing. We've seen some carnage. We've seen some safety cars. But there's been some good racing up front, and what a battle it's been for round number 3.
Another final lap battle. It was sort of final laps, I should say. It came down to the wire, but Bradley Ratu rounding the final quarter. He's going to take round 3 of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying series here from Sandown. It's a 1-2 for 9-5 Sim Sport as they come home, a 1-2 with himself and Dylan Rudd. Shire holds on for P number 3. Look at this battle further back in the pack as well, all the way through. Rian just misses out on coming home inside that top 10 and 11. But what a drive for a number of these guys, which will help them in their chase to qualify for the Pro Series later in the championship.
What an absolutely cracking round. You know, we obviously see a different mindset normally when we come to Sandown. We talk about endurance racing, but this time it was sprint racing. 65 laps, is that a sprint race? But nevertheless, it was a great race. So much on the line for a lot of these drivers, because now we head to Mount Panorama for the final of this qualifying series. And boy, if your championship has been tough to this point, mate, you've got your work cut up for you at Mount Panorama.
And that's one thing you think, going to Bathurst now, especially for Ratu, that'll just, tick the box. That's all you need to do, and that's what you were talking about all day, Jake. Make sure you get a solid amount of points. Ratu did that. He put himself in the position, got the race win, and you can say the same with those guys inside that top 5. That's all you need to do to get points heading into Bathurst.
That's it, and I got to give it to Brad Ratu. I wasn't too sure about that strategy call. Ultimately, it all worked out for him, which is great. I'm convinced that he underfueled that car to actually stay out there. But sometimes that works out for you, and ultimately today, regardless of what happened in the pits or what kind of luck you get, you can't make strategy work if you don't have a fast race car. So he made it work. He didn't make any mistakes, and he stayed out the front, and that's why he won the race.
That's exactly right. He got the strategy right, put himself out in front. And you said it earlier on too, Jake. Track position was what he wanted, and track position was what you would have wanted. And he did that, exactly that, to put himself up and take the win. We'll go through those final results here from round 3 of the Logitech G Supercars Pro Invitational Series with Bradley Ratu taking home a very dominant win Not dominant, I shouldn't say that. He was out in front for most of the races, I look at the laps, but he was just out there. He got the track position, did what he needed to do. Dylan Rudd comes home in P2 to line up with a 9.5 SimSport top 2 with Shire and Kuznetsov with the battle going all the way down to the end to come home third and fourth with Sean McNamara in fifth, Brian Borg, Andrew Dyson, Kenneth Latta, Thomas Hinz and Thomas Freeman rounding out the top 10. Rehan had a really good drive back to finish himself back in P11 with Adam Briggs, Damien Johnson, Sebastian Flock and Sebastian Bundell rounding out the top 15. As we look further through the field, a couple of notables, obviously Robert Gibbs was up inside that top 5. He's also got a penalty after that as well, so he's going to drop even further down the field. Josh Muggleton was having such a good run, he fell further through. Obviously a couple of people with incidents as well that were unable to finish the race out. But what a drive it was tonight, and we'll see if we can grab Bradley Ratu for an interview if we can find him. I've got to find him, but what a race, Sam. And before we do get into interviews for the round 3, and now we head to Bathurst.
Absolutely. I think this was a cracking round. Like I said, I touched on it before that normally when we head to Sandown, we think endurance racing. We think about so many different variables that take part in this event. Usually you've got a co-driver and that will play a big part of the way your race plays out. But tonight, sprint round, they all start thinking about where they are in the championship. They need to be at that crucial point. They don't want to have a bad night because you head to Mount Panorama, it starts to be desperate because you don't want to make the point of where you need to have a really good result at Mount Panorama. That track's hard enough as it is just to do one lap around there. But when you've got a race and then you've got all these guys that are desperate for points behind you too, that's when it really steps up a level. So there's a lot of these guys that will walk away from tonight going, thank goodness we've got those 3 rounds behind us. Wasn't too bad. Some got wins, some didn't. But at the end of the day, it's all about consistency and making sure that you keep that mindset of like, all right, well, now we head to Bathurst, and some people can relax, but there's some people that are really going to carry that pressure to Mount Panorama.
That's exactly right. And heading to Bathurst is not where I'd want pressure, but Ratu won't have much of that as we are joined by our race winner from round 3 of the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying series. And Bradley, what a drive. Congratulations on that. One thing Jake wants to know, did you have the fuel after the second pit stop? Because we didn't think you did, because you came out in front after that second safety car.
Yeah, well, by the sounds of it, the reason I had such a big lead was Dylan was just saying that he stored it into the box, I think on the first pit stop. And Rick and Dylan, well, I think they took a heap more fuel than me at that first stop. My mindset was, stay out front and clean air and hopefully something comes good with it. Because I thought that my teammates would be putting in as much fuel as I did, but they didn't. They went a bit more, which is okay. It all ended up working out for me in the end anyway.
It all played out in for you anyway at the end, like you just said. How was that race for you though, especially that last portion of the race? Obviously 2 safety cars really brought you in. You played the safety car restarts perfectly. You did the first one, you held them all up. The second one, you just disappeared early. Tell us about that mindset and the rest of the race after that.
Oh, I was pretty nervous, I'll say that. Haven't been the most prepared person in the world for these races, but I felt like if I could get good enough jump, it seemed like we had a little bit more straight line pace than what Dylan did, and I figured that it probably meant either lower rear ride height, or sorry, not the lower rear ride height, just more wing. So I figured that he'd probably have a better rear tyre at the end of the race, and my goal was just to try and get away from him, which I think the furthest I ever got away was about a second in those first 10 laps. So I sort of changed my set and kept the pace up, but decided to try and keep a bit of tyre for the end, which turns out I didn't have much of anyway. But yeah, the restarts worked out really, really well for me. It seems that I caught Dylan off guard twice. Don't know if it's just my timing or luck, but yeah, it worked out.
Maybe a bit of both, but it worked out in your favour at the end. But congratulations, a mega drive. It'll put you in a really comfortable spot now heading into Bathurst next week, especially on points. Any shouts anyone would like to thank before we let you go?
I have a massive thank you to the team, because like I said, I haven't been able to get on during the week as I'd like to. I've only been able to get on Mondays and Tuesdays, so I must say that the boys have actually been doing the hard yards and doing all the testing when I haven't been able to get on. So big thank you to those boys, and obviously our sponsors, Racecraft, Cutting Edge Tracks, and Turn In Apparel.
Thank you, Bradley, and congratulations again on taking out round 3 of the championship, and hopefully you have a good run at Bathurst next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was our round 3 winner, Bradley Ratu, and I'm going to chuck it over to Sandman, who'll be with Dylan Rudd.
Dylan, congratulations. P2, mate, you had plenty of things happening on your plate in those dying stages. There was a lot happening. Tell us about those battles towards the end, because it's heart and mouth stuff sometimes getting caught in these racing incidents. You don't want to give away a bunch of points when you're so far up the pointy end of the field.
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of just follow the leader, really. It didn't really was to make a move. It would have been a bit desperate to make a pass on Dylan. Fortunately got him when he tried to make a pass on Brad into turn 1 there, but yeah, other than that, it was very difficult to pass around here.
How was the mindset coming into tonight? As I knock my microphone over, but how was the mindset? Because obviously we spoke about how we come to Sandown. It's normally endurance style racing, but we head here this week, but it's a different mindset altogether, where it's all about sprint racing. How difficult was that to transition from, I guess, from endurance mode to sprint mode?
It wasn't too difficult. Like, to be fair, the first stint didn't really feel like a sprint race because everyone was on fuel saving anyway, so it didn't really feel too different. But yeah, the middle and the last stint was definitely full push. So, but yeah, not too difficult to wrap your head around it.
And you're obviously pretty happy with the P2. It's a good points day, but as that race go on, I guess everyone was very cautious about their tyre wear, because I guess we weren't expecting those safety cars, and that sort of played dividends as far as tyre life. So how was the car in those last couple of laps with that tyre life?
Yeah, my car felt good. Last couple of laps I started to burn the rears out a bit, but yeah, other than that, I was very happy with it. So yeah, can't really complain.
And now we head to Mount Panorama. So different story again. It's normally endurance time, but we're going there for a sprint race. Are you excited about Mount Panorama?
Oh, how can't you be? It's the best track, isn't it? So
absolutely. And what about tonight, mate? Is there anyone you thank before we let you go?
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the boys in the team and our sponsors. 1 second, I'll get them up. Racecraft Simulations, Turn In Race Apparel, RSW Graphics, Racing News, Customer Protections, Cutting Edge Tracks, and RB Media.
Well, congratulations, mate. Hope your lead up to Bathurst is all good. I'm going to hand over now to Jake, and we got Dylan to P3.
Yeah, we are going to be stood by with Dylan Ashaya, who was in a 9.5 SimSport sandwich for most of that race, but managed to bring it home in P3. Tell us about your night, Dylan. What a drive to be able to come home. And you had a dig. You tried to get the win. Unfortunately, didn't come out the end, but you got some good solid points in the bag.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with that. Was able to just keep the lead at the in the first stint, and then boxed for the undercut. Oh, just to stop the others from getting the undercut, because track position is obviously very key at this track. And then stalled it into the box, so I lost, I think, about 2 seconds from that, and then just had to try and dig my way out of that and try and catch Ratu, who was in front of me for that second stint, and then those safety cars came out, and then it kind of saved me a little there. So yeah, it was a good race nonetheless. Yeah, it was a good race with those 9.5 SimSports guys. Just had a good race. It was good fun, yeah.
It looked like a really good race actually out there among all of you guys, especially hard fought racing all throughout, but you guys did a really good job to keep it clean, obviously, and not end up off the racetrack like a couple of other people further back through the field. But tell us about that little mistake in the box. Was that all it cost you to put yourself in traffic? Because we saw you come out in traffic and we're like, that's not the right call for these. Put yourself right in the middle of traffic. Those 2 seconds cost you and put you in that traffic?
Yeah, 100%. I was told that I was going to be in clean air, and then when that happened, just
threw it away.
Threw it away a little. So, but I mean, that's all right.
You can't be unhappy with that though, considering your race pace was electric. Your first stint was really good, then obviously the little mistake, but you were still there at the end and put yourself in that position to be able to capitalize and get some really good points.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Rudd and Kuznetsov were definitely quicker than me, but was just able to keep Kuznetsov at least behind, and yeah, just finish third.
How do you feel heading into Bathurst, though, for the final round of the championship? Obviously, this will put you in a good stead in terms of points. But how do you feel about Bathurst? Obviously, it's our crown jewel. But to go sprint racing there, it's a different beast.
Yeah, we've done a few laps there with the Bathurst 1000 last year, and then a couple of other league races this year. So I feel like we are prepared and ready for next week. So I'm confident we're going to get a decent result and to keep us in the top 20. That's for sure.
That's all you guys need to do. Getting that top 20 to get into the Pro Series later on in this year. But congratulations on a really strong showing tonight, Dylan. Any shouts anyone you'd like to thank?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you to our team sponsors, simrigs.com, Southwell Lifts and Hoist, Ben Max Mechanical, Phoenix Smokers, and MP Designs.
Thank you, Dylan, and congratulations on the top 3, and hopefully you can have a really good song run next week about this.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you, and that will round out our podium finishes tonight. And what a showing from everyone. It was such a good race throughout. And now you said to Bathurst.
It's unreal, isn't it? A different mindset again. You know, we touched on it all night about the transition to Sandown and how that mindset changes. But when it to Mount Panorama, there's going to be people that walk away from tonight. They're going to be pretty chuffed with their result. They know there's going to be a lack of pressure going there, but there's other drivers that are going to be like, my goodness, everything is going to come down to racing at Mount Panorama. And that, like I said before, it's tricky enough just to do laps around there as it is. But when you're in that pressure cooker situation and you know that they're running out of laps, that's where it's going to be really tough for these guys. But that's all about how this series is. It's only a 4-round series. These guys are in these pressure cooker situations because if they can survive and make the way through this and progress through this series, they know they've got their work cut out for them, and they'll obviously be able to bring their best foot forward when this series goes proper later in the year.
And that's exactly what they need to do. Heading into the rest of the year, it'll be good for them now to get that little bit of a momentum, especially with Bathurst. It's such a big track. You have a really good, strong ride. I'm sure you can vouch on that as well, Jake. You have a good, strong run at Bathurst, sort of sets yourself up for a good rest of the year.
Yeah, that's it. It's one of those tracks where there's definitely specialists. As much as I hate to say it, Phillip Island is one of those tracks. We spoke about that earlier in the season. But I'm looking through this list. There's a few drivers who haven't had the best seasons who could really turn it around. We've got, the likes of Brian Borg. He's a podium getter in the V8 Bathurst 1000. Josh Muggleton, he's won that race. So these are guys who are very experienced, have raced Bathurst since it came out on the service since 2013. That's really going to make a difference, I think, in this last race, and a race that's really going to matter in terms of getting your nose into this series.
That's it, and that's all these guys will be fighting for. But once again, mega shout out and a mega thank you to yourself, Jake, and also Sam Man for joining me in the commentary booth once again for the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying series. Again, I won't be here for next week as I start my venture as a casino game stealer next week, which will be a little bit of a change for me. So I won't be here for the final round of the qualifying series, but I look forward to watching all the action to see who qualifies for the Pro Series, where I'll come back and join him once again. Luke, mega job behind the scenes that Luke does with all the cameras for every round that he does. And obviously I can't wait to see what he has in store for Bathurst. But once again, from all of us here and all the stewards and everyone else behind the scenes, thank you for joining us tonight here for the Logitech G Supercar Pro Invitational qualifying series from Sandown for round 3. Bradley Ratu, race winner. Next week, Bathurst. See you then.